is that each year our federal and state funding, which is currently 53.5% to 54%, goes down about 0.5% per year. So what happens is everybody in the state's transit budgets go up as their expenses go up, and the pool of funds doesn't really increase much. Federal went up 2% this year, however, everybody's budgets went up more than 2%. So it just takes that pie, and our slice of the pie gets a little bit smaller each year. When I started, we were at 55 to 56%. That was 6 years ago. Now we're down to about 53.5. So since about 2009, it's went down 0.5% per year, which then puts pressure on the local levy. So even though our ridership's down,
it's probably been going about 0.5% a year for 20 years. So just, this isn't a recent phenomenon, but it's just been a slow whittling away.
Right.
Sorry, Jim.
Oh, no, that's okay. So that's what we got to keep trying to balance each year. And currently, the last few years, what has helped with our budget is fuel prices have been fairly low, which that helps our budget, because then we can, we tend to budget conservatively, but then when fuel comes in under budget, that helps. And that helps also so that we get a little bit of leeway. So where you see the way that the budget has been, the levy has been kept down and the budget has been balanced the last few years is if you look at the surplus deficit line, that is generally, that's from two sources. We're assuming, again, that fuel will be favorable this year and that we'll be able to come in under budget and we won't need that $45,000 that's on that surplus deficit line. So that's the last couple of years I've been here anyway, that's how the levy has been kept down, is that because fuel has been down. And where that surplus comes from, it's two sources. It's one, fuel savings, and then two, about right before I started, we switched from insurance companies, and so they had a little bit of reserve built up, so we got that reserve back. So that's been also being used to kind of help keep the levy down. So as far as revenue then goes, three other points. UWO ended their revenue agreement last year with us. So last year they had where basically they gave us so much money per year and it had a floor and a ceiling based on ridership. However, any of their faculty, students, or alumni could ride for free. They cut out alumni last year and they ended that agreement, and what they currently do is they buy passes, and then any of their students or faculty can come to the parking office and get a pass. Now, as you probably are aware, their budget is under stress as well. So this coming year, they're actually going to be eliminating faculty, and it's just going to be students as of September, I think is their current plan, which they're in the process of figuring that out. So that'll...
Where's that shown in the revenue? What, under which?
It would be in the revenue, in the total revenue line. Yeah, we don't break out the UWO
Is it
revenue
under,
separate.
like, monthly passes that they're buying, or?
Right, yep.
Okay.
It's mostly monthly passes.
Okay.
Correct.
Mr. Collins, can I just
yes.
ask a question? So I don't think I've ever asked this. Do we have massive, like, tanks for holding fuel to be able to buy ahead of time if we know there's going to be a change, either from a political standpoint or just things that we can't control outside of, you know, like in our oil nations? Right. I mean, do we have the ability? No.
No, we don't. Currently we have two 12,500 gallon tanks. And Brian could probably tell, how much fuel do we go through it?
About every 3 weeks we get a truckload in, which is 7,500 gallons. So we really don't have a lot of room to store it.
There's not a store, okay. And there's no way to do any type of agreements or anything to sign where it's of a certain price and then we can hold to that contract for X amount of period of time?
I'm not aware of anything. Purchasing purchases our fuel for us. So what they do is they send out a bid sheet every I think it's every 3 or 4 weeks, and then they get quotes back, and then they go with the lowest bid. So they send it to like 4 or 5 vendors.
And how long is it good for?
Those are generally like good for like a week, because then we buy it right away after that.
That's what I figured. All right.
Would there be any to that point, any look at maybe extending that contract for more than, say, you get a good price and you negotiate and say, can you hold that price for 3 months, let's just say, or 6 months? I don't know. I don't know how that purchasing works that way. I don't know, Mr. Roloff, there's something that way we could do, or,
They keep track of the.
yeah, prices up
Yeah,
and down.
so
It's just like the gas
commodity-wise,
stations.
they're-
Yeah, it's just like the gas, but I know a lot of fuel oil or LP you can pre-buy,
Yeah, propane you can.
you know, and then they'll come out and fill as you need, but I just, you know,
yeah, the
all it
diesel-
take is something, crisis in the world to happen and the price of fuel shoots through the roof. and-
Oh, in '09, we were getting clobbered.
Yeah, but at that point, barrels stayed right around $98 to $100 a gallon. They're talking that if there was something substantial to come up, we're talking $100 to $150 a barrel. That would kill our budget, absolutely kill our budget, because then you're talking $4 to $5 a gallon.
But you always have that risk if you got a lot of fuel on hand that there was an explosion or a fire that,
I
you know.
think part of the problem with that probably is not knowing, but again, with the amount of fuel we buy, it's very minimal compared to a lot of other larger places are buying a lot more oil, where they're probably more willing to deal that way.
Okay.
Where we're, again, 12,000 gallons really isn't, in the big scheme of things, I don't wanna make it sound small, but 12,000 gallons isn't a whole lot when it
Right.
comes to the distributor.
It's a transport.
Yeah, it's
So
just one
it-
tanker truck.
That's your fuel, right? That's not the highway, or the
Right.
street department, they have their own
Right.
setup, okay.
Yep, which actually I'll talk about our fuel tanks in a second when we get to capital. But so to finish up on the transit budget, we have our Fox Valley Tech. We also have a revenue agreement with them. That's up at the end of the year. So I've been working with their previous administrator retired, so the new one this one kind of getting her feet wet. But I have a call with her next week. We already sent them kind of our thoughts, our proposal. So I'm hoping that continues. They haven't really given me any indication one way or another. I'm assuming it will. But that's also a revenue source for us that's stable, that we continue to rely on. So in conjunction with that then, we're talking about revenue, and I know there's been discussion about the school and what we're gonna do with the school district. So that is not currently in the budget. If we could do a revenue agreement with them, that would be my preference, because that would help with stabilizing revenue and also would help ridership. More ridership is good, however, not having the funding for that is not good. So I guess I know that's a continuing discussion that you'll have to continue with the school district. However, that is a concern as far as our operating budget goes, because it's like I said, it's currently not in there, and if the current proposal, I think it was 25,000, funding would have to come from somewhere and be somewhat sustainable, which, and I'm not sure how the school district's budgets that, but, so that's a little bit of it's just a concern. I wanted to point out that it's not currently in there. And
So, Jim, just to clarify, the 25,000 from the city side isn't in there, but you've still budgeted for the school district's, regular contribution, correct?
right, so what they currently do is they purchase, I think they said, 21,000 in passes, so that would be in our revenue.
Okay. And then addition, the private portion of that plan is not in here as well. So if we were to make it kids ride the bus for free, you're saying that we need to still put that minus the district's portion, we still need to put that in here.
Right, well, we currently get about 50,000 in fares from sales.
Sure.
So if the city's still, or if the school district was gonna purchase 25,000, then we would have to come up with, and the school district, like you said, purchased like 21,000, so it's about 69,000 total. So say they continue purchasing 20,000, we'd still have to come up with that 50,000 if we didn't get that in fares.
Okay.
It would really be whether we, because we're almost getting into light items there, so I don't want, the policy decision for council is really gonna be more about, are we gonna do an increased general fund subsidy and how much that is? So, that's, right now it's at it's proposed at 809. Do you make it, something like 835 plus or minus. That's really what you're looking at.
Yeah, and that's a policy for you guys in the school district. However, I do have some concern if we subsidize the school district's budget with our budget.
Yeah, we can't do
So that's a concern, but that's up for you guys in the school district to discuss. So that's where we're at as far as our operating budget. Those are the highlights. I guess I can answer any questions about that. Yep, that's a good segue. I can talk a little bit about our capital. Our capital, we replaced the 3 remaining 2003 buses, which that was through a federal grant, which is good because our federal capital grants are 80%, so we always try to maximize those as much as we can. So now our fleet's in pretty good shape. Our oldest buses now are the 2010s, so with a useful life of 12 years, we'll be looking at to replace those in 21, 22. I was successful in getting a grant last year for one more bus, so I asked them if we could delay that until the 2021. So probably we'll look at starting the purchasing cycle in 21 and then replace that in 22.
How many of those are hybrid, Jim?
The 2010s, all 4 of them are hybrids.
I mean, out of our total.
Oh, so out of 16, 4 of them are.
And back then, we were funded, that was 90% funded for those hybrid buses back then. So it was a really good incentive for us to do that. But Jim, you're trying to do something to perhaps extend the life of those as well, right?
Yeah, well, we because we have to keep them for 12 years, so we still got another few years to go. The batteries are only expected to last 5 to 7 years on those. So as you may be aware, we replaced one of the battery packs last year, and then we replaced one of them this year, so that we can ensure that they get through to 2022.
But that's a mandate,
Proactively.
that was part of the deal.
How much are those batteries?
70,000. Well, it depends.
About 65 to 70.
They're not your little Duracells at
But
Batteries
is it
Plus.
offsetting the fuel?
No, that's actually a good question. Actually, our clean diesel buses that we currently get are more fuel efficient than the hybrids.
Because of the weather, or why?
No, it's because of the new technology. So basically, the new ones, obviously, the technology gets better every year, and then they get cleaner every year too, because they have an after treatment system. So the exhaust doesn't just go straight out into the air like it used to. It actually goes through a system which burns the exhaust again before it goes out into the air, so it makes it cleaner.
So would it be better going into the future buying the diesel ones instead of the electric ones?
Currently, we can get one clean diesel bus we can get 2 clean diesel buses for the price of one electric bus. Electric bus right now is about $800,000, and we can get a clean diesel for $450,000. So there's that, and then the additional cost of infrastructure. Then we have to have charging infrastructure, which we don't currently have, which adds to the cost. So by the time you add it up, it gets to be pretty costly. I think that is the wave of the future, but the prices will eventually come down as the technology gets better and people start testing them more. So the main concern is the cost, but then there's also a couple other concerns with electric buses. They haven't really been tested in a cold weather climate yet. Duluth has some. La Crosse is getting one next year. Madison got 1 or 2 this year. So they're kind of testing it, and we'll see how they do. I know their maintenance manager in Madison isn't real happy with them so far. But
I know with what I've read with the electric buses, a lot of the cities are having to do different routes because they can't get up the hills in the winter.
right. And then the other concern is how long will the charge last? They say it's a little over 200 miles now, but from the systems I've talked to, they haven't gotten to that yet. They're more like 150, 160. So we need about 200 miles to do a whole day of service. So those are the 3 main concerns with it. But then also, additionally, there's debate about how clean they actually are, because if you think about it, well, how do you generate electricity?
Yep.
You're burning coal. So
Right, yep.
yeah, so I don't know. I mean, there's that debate as well.
So a question about the health insurance back in the writing here. So it looks like most of our other departments, it went down, but here we went up. Is that like additional staff or?
No, we haven't had any additional staff. However, as some of the older drivers retire and then we get younger workforce, they generally are on like a family plan, whereas the older ones were probably on a single or a dual.
There's always a personal story with these health insurance questions. It's, and I can, oh, so-and-so got married, so-and-so had a kid. So there is a turnover
Yeah.
in our transit drivers. That phenomenon is there, yeah.
And so we're booking true cost each department, that's what I'm understanding, instead of the average or aggregate over the entire
We look
organization.
we look at potential vacancies. If we know a retirement's coming up, or if there's an existing vacancy, we always assume that a new employee will take family coverage just to set up our budget. If they don't, then we're a little bit better off. But we actually go through each personnel for each department and make those assumptions prior to the budget being prepared.
Yeah, and we do have a senior driving force, so that's, I'm glad you said that, because that jogged my memory a little. We do have at least one driver that's gonna be retiring, and so we're assuming we're replacing that with somebody that's probably younger, gonna be on a family. And then the last year or two, that held true too. Generally, when we replace some of the younger drivers, they generally have younger families versus the senior drivers that are single or duals. So.
And a question on the contractual services, not sure what that is, but it looks like from 2017 to 2020, it's like almost double. What's
Where's that one? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, that's 6401?
Generally, what that is that's where our contract with our IT provider is. So that's like half of that, or not our IT, but we have a database developer that basically what he does for us is he maintains, we have to do federal reporting. So like all of our passenger counters, like ridership. Also, we have to keep track of all the bus maintenance. We have to keep track of basically all the technology that's on the bus, the tablets, which track our ridership. He also does our app. So with our app, part of that is we have to rewrite that program for Android. So we currently have Windows tablets. We're gonna have to replace those with Android to keep that app running because the technology is advancing so fast. So half of that is for his services and keeping all our technology going, which actually it's kind of nice for us because he customizes everything how we need it, and it's a lot cheaper than it would be to buy a software package to do what he does. Would cost us double or triple, and it wouldn't do exactly what we need. So that's the vast majority of the contractual services. But I think the biggest reason that it's increasing is because we're going to have to work on replacing those tablets and updating our technology. The other thing I put in there a little bit is I think we're going to, eventually we've been looking at going to mobile fares, and when we do that, we're going to have to contract with somebody to do that. And I think in the past what we did is we budgeted for electronic fare boxes, but now the current trend, and I think what we're going to end up with is some type of app on your phone where you can purchase transit media on your phone. So we're budgeting a little bit for that and or for marketing, because that's another thing that we just don't have the resources to do in-house.
So that, so those updated devices are linked to services, and that's why it's in services.
The devices aren't, however, the programming is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
Programming of the device,
Yep.
gotcha, okay. Which ultimately saves time and money, I guess, in some of the administration
Right.
reporting requirements for the
Yep.
grants. So it costs money to
Right.
money.
Yep. Yeah, that's an excellent explanation. That's when we got the tablets, they went from so like our drivers have to punch in their fare types on the tablet. Previous to having those tablets, they'd bring it back and then somebody in the office had to manually enter all that information. Now when the bus comes into the garage, it transmits wirelessly and it goes right into our database. And then our developer helps us make sure that we got all the reports we need, which is really nice. From what I've seen, I've actually looked at a couple other systems reporting, like Valley Transit. We actually went and looked at theirs a couple months ago, and they got like 3 different systems, but none of them really do anything. They each do one thing well, but none of them do exactly what you need, whereas what we have is pretty customized to exactly what we need. So that's kind of nice. But
It's really nice to be able to use your phone now. I've done this a couple of times to help other people out and see the different route options and when the next one's coming, just through Google Maps. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, and our app we've had a couple glitches with it, which is part of the reason we're gonna have to pay a little bit more this year to get them to update that. Because on the Windows tablets, you have to constantly update the Windows tablet, and then our tablets are about 4 or 5 years old now, so the GPS isn't as accurate as we'd like. So this year, we're looking at going to Android tablets, which are cost half as much, but they download their updates automatically, and they're easier to maintain. So that's what our developers recommended. He said, I think it's more stable, the GPS will be more accurate, and it'll save money in the long run.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just a couple questions on the revenue side of things. 4926 rent of land, so that we must have some land that we lease out or something?
Yeah, what that is the actual, the driveway between us and Addison Jones. We have an access agreement with them where they pay us, I think it's like a couple thousand a year, just so that they can have access to that driveway. Otherwise, they would be cut off basically from the street in the back anyway.
And then I think you may have talked about this already, but I think you said it in different words, so I'm just gonna ask it.
Sure.
4982 in 2018, we had that 2.4 million come in revenues, but we have nothing now. So what was that 2.4?
That's a good question for
yeah.
Russ or Mark.
That's typically when we purchase a bus.
Okay.
That contributed capital is considered the federal money.
That's what I thought.
It's considered, yeah, so, yeah, so it's the bus
Yep.
purchases,
Okay.
yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, unlike a lot of these other ones, like our special revenue funds that get funded mostly with tax dollars. This one gets funded a portion with tax dollars. So the fund balance that's shown there is more of like a private business. It's the value of the transit system. It's not how much cash we have. So it looks really good that it's like 7.5 million, but the reality is that's the net assets. If we dissolve today, our net assets with our buses would be valued about that much, right, Russ?
Yeah, from a technical standpoint, the transit's operated as an enterprise utility, which is basically full business accounting. The rest of our funds, special revenue funds and general government, is a modified accrual basis. It's not a true business, it's more governmental accounting, and there's some different standards. So with a full-blown enterprise fund, you're gonna have depreciation just like a business. You're gonna have capital, and you have to record the contributed capital to offset that. So when you get into this whole section, it says enterprise and utilities, those are really accounted for like a business.
Okay.
The rest of them are all government type accounting.
So Russ, sorry.
No, I'm just teasing. That's what happens when you unleash the account at 8:30 in the morning.
And I think one of the things that you just said, depreciation, I think kind of speaks to 5,300. I assume that 7,300 is like a return on the sale of buses when we get new buses?
I'm sorry, I lost you on that question.
5,300.
Sale of capital assets.
Yes.
That's
So-
probably a residual sale.
Yeah, residual sale of like, because I guess I'm hearing stories that a bus that we get 10 years ago and spends however much money 10 years ago is really only worth a minimal, nominal amount of what it was.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure by the time that's part of it. That's what it is. But like, if we sell a bus, usually it's scrap. Well, the 2003s are we actually let Valley Transit use them for a little bit, but now they've got new ones as well. So they're basically going to go to the scrap yard. But
Could we repurpose them as small homes
yeah,
in the bus graveyard? I don't
yeah,
know.
I've seen glamping with
Yeah.
buses.
Well, these are, we have a reserve of vehicles that we use for EAA. So when we finally send these out to pasture, they're in real rough shape.
Right.
They are, it's kind of a boneyard type of thing. We do salvage things
yeah.
off the buses.
Of the three that we got left that they're actually currently out for, we work with purchasing. They put them up for sale, so they're currently for sale. We haven't got any bids yet, but only one of the three
Also, tour
operates.
bus.
So,
We're putting you on the nice school buses. I already talked to Vicky last
Yeah.
week. We're putting you on nice school buses.
yeah,
Or
so,
nice buses.
so of those three, only one of them runs. The other two have some major issues with them, so they don't even run right now. And then, like the last one we sold, I mean, the floor was rusted out. The wheelchair ramp didn't work. I mean, they do a pretty good job of cannibalizing them too. Anything that they can salvage, we take off of them.
Listen, I mean, one other side note, I mean, when we have those older buses in the fleet, Brian, you know, if one of the other buses needs something, one of the buses turns into a donor bus to, you know, until you get them, so
Yep.
they're, if someone wanted to buy them, they'd have to stick a lot of money into to keep them
Even
operating.
just roll them off the yard.
Right.
Yeah, and they get about the old ones, 4.5 miles a gallon. So,
Madam Mayor, in the interest of keeping, Mr. Larson just walked in, just reminded, we have 25 minutes.
Yep.
But we have several other budgets in addition to just transit.
Sure.
And Jim, was,
yep.
page 39, 2020-39, there's one vehicle related to transit here.
Yeah, for capital, just, I don't know which page you're on. Oh, you're on that's
Your major equipment vehicles.
so you're talking about this, we have the service truck on there, which will, that's what we use to maintain, do road calls, stuff like that, which will apply for a grant, and then hope, if we would get it, we would get 80%. If we don't get it, then we'll probably use it another year. The big project we have for this year is replacing our underground fuel tanks. Basically, to make a long story short, there's nothing wrong with them. They've been in the ground since 1980. However, our insurance company is very nervous about them. They actually have raised our deductible up to $350,000. They said they weren't going to insure them last year. This year they did the same thing, and they just keep increasing our deductible. Obviously, it's not that they're concerned they're underground tanks with that, and we do have them leak tested every year, and they pass. They're concerned with the age of them, obviously, and that's a bigger risk for them. So we're going to work on, I've already talked to the feds and the state about this need, and we're hoping that they'll be able to fund it through a capital grant, which would be 80%. It's a smaller amount. It's about 200,000, so whereas a bus like 450. So their priority is replacing buses. However, they understand our need, and I sent them the letter from the insurance company saying they weren't going to insure them anymore, and said we need to do something about this. So they sounded pretty optimistic that they'd be able to help us out with it. So that's going to be our number one priority for this year. That would reduce our deductible from $350 to $5,000. So
Where is that on page 39, Jim?
It's not,
30.
30. I'm sorry, but
Oh, I see.
you'll see federal grant. It kind of answers the question you had yesterday, was that $307,000. The way it kind of triggered my memory. We're putting here that we're counting on a federal grant in the budget. If we don't get the federal grant, we still need to get the tanks. So that $307,000 was kind of a CIP contingency. So if these things don't come to pass, we still have money available. And if let's say we bought the tanks, we knew we didn't get the grant, we would come to council to approve the tank purchase and also approve a budget transfer from CIP contingency to fund the balance that we wouldn't get. So it's just a conservative thing especially with transit, because you never know about those grants, if you're going to get them or not. So that's just our way. And it's a good contingency to have anyway, because if we get the grant, great, we still have a contingency for anything else that might come up.
So you said that our deductible is up to 350,000. So by putting those new tanks in, what does that reduce our deductible to?
$5,000.
Wow.
So yeah, they're obviously very
That's why
concerned
we're
about
doing it whether we get the grant or not.
Okay.
Yeah, and it would save, the premium would go down, I think it's about $3,000 a year or something like that. So the only thing I wanted to mention as far as our capital for transit is as a follow-up to our transit development plan, we've begun the planning process for a possible new downtown transit center. And the reasoning for that is what it'll do is it sets us up for applying for grants in the future. The first step is, if you're looking at any type of major building or capital project, is to do a plan. And the planning, we worked with East Central. They applied for a planning grant, which they were successful in. And what it'll do, it'll help us hire a consultant to do like site selection, and then also give us funding ideas for it. work on those types of things. It's probably, the first step is to get that plan done this coming year. It's probably a couple of years out yet, but it takes a few years to go through the planning and apply for grants and all that stuff. La Crosse did this maybe 3-4 years ago, and they were successful. They did a private-public partnership where they got a transit center, some parking facilities, they have some retail, and then they also have some residential, some apartments, all kind of in one building.
Yes.
And then Eau Claire was successful with the grant last year. They finished the planning process, but now I think they're constructing next year, but something similar.
And more that transit-oriented development.
Yep. So that's our plan. So we're at step one, I guess. But
Jim, one follow-up question to a conversation that we had several months ago. We had a conversation about making the transit center, the current transit center, more accessible.
Yep.
Regards, did we ever get a push door or a electrical door on
Yep. Yes, we did get that done.
Okay.
Yep.
Good, thank you.
With respect to the school issue, because that's going to be an ongoing issue, and it'll get resolved one way or another. What I would suggest, if council just wants to put in some type of contingency, then it can be sort of like talking about the capital improvements that we just did. If you want to put a contingency, then whatever happens, happens. We do have we have a cash balance, and conversation Councilmember Peschel and I had was, if we're talking about a 3-year issue, for at least year one, we can do it without unnecessarily going after the levy. We can maybe go after a little bit of our fund balance. We can absorb a 1 year in uncertainty. It's 2 and 3 years and ongoing is my concern, but 1 year you can absorb something. So I would suggest if you want to do that later on as we're going through, because Mr. Peschel asked about, should we put it into the enhancement package?
That's what I was
Yeah,
wondering.
so I think we just do it as absorb it in fund balance, but put a contingency in.
For the full 50?
Well, we already have the expenditures, and so it's really just a matter of absorbing it with fund balance, and I think we can just do it that way. And if you'll just humor us while we figure out exactly how we do that, but I think we just absorb it for the first year if we have to. And then how we do 2 and 3 years, that'll really be more of that's the tricky part.
Why wouldn't we just do the 25? Because that's kind of what we.
But we're
came up
not
with.
spending more.
Yeah.
So the question is do you use fund balance or do you tax for it? What I'm suggesting is don't tax for it. Just absorb it at least the first year. Then at this time next year, we'll have an agreement or we won't. And then we can decide from there how we move. But I think we've got fund balance because we had a surplus this year because of fuel and things like that. So we've got a fund balance that we can absorb $25,000. And Jim's probably
But
going to
where
say
does the other 25 come from? Because Jim
Well-
was saying,
that's a line item issue, and I would encourage you to, because it's either this revenue line or that revenue line.
Yeah, but I think what Larry's saying though is that, so school districts contribute in 21, you're proposing that they contribute a few extra, so they get to 25, but there's still that 19,000 or approximately out there that's not accounted for anywhere.
Yeah, well, therein lies the reality of that contribution, which is really only a $6,000 increase.
So what we're kind of thinking is where do we lie the 19,000? Is that what we're
Yeah,
talking about?
that's what I think. I think the proposal was to get that from private sources.
Yeah, exactly. But the reality. So could that fall under miscellaneous revenue?
Yeah, we can do that to net it out, but it's going to come down to what council's willing to do, but but we can absorb it the first year. We're really just playing with line items at this point.
So I got 4 more budgets, so I'll try to go
Now,
fast here.
This is the line share transportation.
So our sign division is page 107. For operating on our sign budget, it's operating status quo. Only 2 things of note there are our labor went down a little bit because again we've had some younger people in that budget. However, the demand for, I just want to point out 2 things. The demand for signs and paint continues to increase every year. We've been getting by, but obviously as we continue to get more demand for neighborhood signs and for bike lanes, things like that, we just have to keep an eye on our operating budget. Those things are great, but we have to maintain those every year then after that. So we just got to be cognizant of that. And then we budgeted to replace one of our walk-behind paint machines. We replaced one last year, replaced the other one this year, and then we're in pretty good shape. We replaced the paint truck, the major one, about a year and a half ago. So then we'll be good as far as our painting equipment goes. So those are basically the highlights of signs.
What's the contractual services, 6401?
Probably for John. Yeah, John.
Oh, okay.
Tech side support.
So that's, that, two things. That's sign support. So we have a sign program, and we have a contractor that comes every year and trains our new staff and maintains that program for us. And then I leave a little bit in there in case we ever have to do any scarifying, which means if we reconfigure a road and we have to scrape the old lines off, we have a small machine that does, so we can do a small area. But like when we did Sawyer Avenue, for instance, or Sawyer Street, we couldn't do that with our machine. We had that contract Century Fence. They have a big, like, couple $100,000 truck that they can come and do that with. And they
West
do it.
Haven,
Yeah.
that was another big one.
We did West Haven in-house, but that was quite a process with our little machine versus Century Fence can come in there and do it in a couple hours. So I leave a little bit in there for that as well.
That's really it with
Yep,
signs.
and if you're okay with that, then, our parking utility is basically.
Why don't you go back, you got, that's
wanna
electrical.
do
You wanna
electric?
wait- No, do
Okay.
do parking.
Parking, just two things there. The parking utility budget, I'm not looking at the pages, I'm just looking at my notes, but
72, all right.
Signals this morning.
so the bid's gonna continue to fund the 15,000 as they have done, to maintain the free parking downtown. The rest of the budget status quo, as far as the parking utility goes. Until the point in time that, there's a desire to do paid parking, it's pretty much gonna be status quo, as long as the bid keeps contributing their 15,000. And at some point, if we want to look at paid parking, that's when we would look at doing something different. So that's the operating part of that. And then for the CIP part of it, we budgeted 500,000 again, and that is basically what we do every year for pavement maintenance. This last year, we reconstructed the Convention Center North, also known as the CP lot. That should be done, I believe, next week, is what I'm being told. And prior to that, we did the Otter Street parking lot. The plan for this coming year is to do the 10th Avenue parking lot, which is the one at Oregon and 10th. If you remember, when we reconstructed Oregon Street, the businesses were concerned about parking in that area, and this is one of the things we told them that we would get to in the next few years. So following that plan, we'll plan on using that money for that this coming year. So that's parking. Any questions there?
Just on that CIP, page 30, parking lot improvements then. Which one is this referring to? Parking lot improvements, 'cause we also have the assessment update, but
Yep.
is this referring to 10th?
Parking lot
Yes.
improvements, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Parking lot improvements is kind of like what we were talking about yesterday with John Urban regarding HVAC. This is an allowance that we just, dedicated, put in every year, and then Jim evaluates them with,
Is this
with
the
the
one that's
consultant.
gravel?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
it's time.
It's time, yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't historically a lot of usage there, but now with Oregon being redone, it'll help, spruce up that whole area, I think. It's,
For the assessment, the 20 grand, I know it's a small amount in the CIP, but every dollar is important. We contract that out for somebody else to come in and basically say what the status of our parking lots is?
yeah, what that is we started this about 10 years ago, actually before I got here. So about approximately every 5-6 years, we've used the same company the last couple of years. It keeps the cost down. What they'll do is they'll take the previous assessment and they'll rate each parking lot on basically the same as streets on a PACER rating of 1 to 10. But then what they also do is they make recommendations. So they basically, what they do is then give us, and that's what I use. They kind of give me a 10-year plan. Like, here's the ones we think you should do first. Here's their PACER rating. Here's why. If there's drainage issues and things like that. So we look to update that plan. I think the last time we did it was 2014. We said about every 5 years. We're more on like every 6 or 7. But it'll update the PACER rating of all the stuff we've done, and then it lays out kind of priority list going forward.
Is there any federal or state funding that's tied to us doing doing that assessment and having somebody outside do it?
No.
One reason I ask is, I mean, is there not somebody within city staff somewhere in Public Works or in the transportation department that has the ability to do that, to not have a $20,000 assessment paid to an outside consultant?
I do not believe so. I know from our standpoint we don't, and I know engineering is short like 2 engineers right now.
Engineering has done PACER ratings for our streets, but there was a question yesterday, probably just got passed over.
I'm just talking parking lots, not streets PACER rating, but just parking lot.
You know, it's something we could talk to James about, but he farmed it out this year because it just became too much for his existing crews, so we farm it out.
Yeah.
These days, we've been farming it out.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad thought, but our department's real minimal, but I know engineering is struggling with the staff shortage they have. They're great to work with, and I mean, I will say that, and from organizations I've worked with, that we work together really well at the city here, especially, and I really appreciate all the help Public Works gives us. So these parking lots, actually, the last few years, they've done the design, and then they've also managed the projects, which saves us money on the project. However, as far as putting the plan together, it'd probably be at least a few month project for somebody, which they would have to have somebody to do.
Sure.
I'm not going to speak for them, but I don't think they have anybody that currently could do that. So,
Payroll-wise, it may actually,
They have capability,
it
but not
may
the
cost
time.
us more in
Right.
the long run,
yeah,
potentially.
that's a good way to say
So
it.
Jim, just the question on that dollar amount then for that 10th Street, that's a smaller lot, right? And if I recall, we spent about this much on some of the larger lots. Do we anticipate this being a true number?
I don't, right, it kind of depends. I think we're going to have an issue right now with the CP Convention Center North lot, which I'm hoping to give you an update on. I got a meeting with engineering later this morning, but that's going to go over because they ran into some foundation issues. There's a lot of old foundations under there, and contaminated soil that they had to haul to, which caused more tipping fees. So kind of how that fund works is similar, like Mark said, to the HVAC, is if we're under 1 year, then we roll that into the next year. So I don't know. We're going to be discussing that at 10:30 with engineering, how much we're going to be over and how we're going to fund that. This one, right now, from the estimates I got from engineering, it should be less than 500,000, but those costs go up every year. And again, it's kind of a crapshoot. I mean, it depends what they run into when they start digging.
Do we have the ability then to save any by using the partial permeable pavers, similar to what they did in parking lot at the YMCA, and also help with some of our stormwater and phosphorus stuff?
That's more the reason you use it is for the stormwater aspect.
Okay.
And again,
We did it at Senior Center.
Right, it'll
Yep.
probably be looked at as part of that parking
Yeah.
lot, just because, you know, we also have to be mindful of where our water runoff goes and how we treat that. So that'll be all part of the engineering. It's a very small lot, so it may not need that, but, again, it's all when because it hasn't been designed yet. I mean, we know the lot is
Right.
there,
Those guys.
but the lot itself hasn't been designed, lighting,
Sure.
stormwater, all that stuff, that all comes kinda as the design develops.
Yeah, and that doesn't necessarily save them any money, but
Actually, a little more expensive,
Yeah.
but it's a stormwater treatment issue.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In other areas, I
Right.
meant. that-
I thought where you were going, so I might as well interject that here. Because this is an allowance, you know, Jim's trying to figure out how he's gonna take care of the CP lot. When we did this lot across the street, the convention center lot, we actually spent short on a few projects. We did small projects like a 10th, so then we saved up some money because that was over $1 million. We only have 500,000 a year, so we bankrolled like 3 years. Were you here when we did that one?
Did it in
Yeah.
2 phases also.
Yeah, Yeah,
Yeah, that was a
exactly.
huge
So,
project.
But that's what we do to just balance those things out. But CP, once these guys started opening things up and saw what we had, it's like, oh boy.
Well, and quite honestly, the CP lot, we've kind of done in 2 phases also. Remember the lot off of
Yeah, we did Otter last
Otter,
year.
got done last year, and we made contingents with the stormwater and, underground facilities it would roll into this year's, so,
Which is,
We had a funny feeling it was gonna
yeah.
do what it did.
Wasn't the parking lot originally capping some of these issues? As a way of dealing with some of those?
they did do some of that at the convention center, which is the former Riverside lot, the one we did a few years ago. They did cap it as much as they could. They did have to haul a lot of contaminated soil, but then I'm not as versed in all that, but working with the DNR, they did what they could and then they capped it and paved over it. But they did have to haul quite a bit out as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, the good news in the parking lots is I think that we've done a pretty good job with that downtown area now, revitalizing a lot of the convention center area. Those lots are new now, so they should be in good shape for long term. Now we're going to get over to that Oregon, the south of the river, get some of that done, which is actually why we need that parking lot. We've done a pretty good job on the plan that we put in place in 2014, so now it's time to update that and get our plan for the next 10 years.
Unfortunately, we're trying to play catch-up on the shape and the condition of all the city lots. And, at some point in time, we're still trying to catch up on some of the lots where some of the lots that we did 5-6 years ago need some of that maintenance. So we got to make sure we don't neglect that maintenance to some of those lots to prolong the life of them, since we spent so much on them in years past. So it all's kind of got to roll together in that year to year to year to year thing. So.
Yeah, and we work with Public Works to do crack filling and maintain them. And so, in the light of keep moving here, we got scooters left, so we got electric and street lighting. So electric's on looks like
104.
Again, and that budget is status quo. The only increase is normal labor costs. I know scooters guys. We have 4 electricians, and they're in high demand throughout the city. As you know, they maintain all our traffic signals, street lights, work with developers on doing the plans for new developments, as well as they work on all the city buildings, at least the buildings that don't have their own in-staff electricians.
What percentage have we replaced LEDs with other?
With the city-owned lights, we're probably, without having the exact numbers, I'm probably 75% of the city-owned lights. And anything new we put in is obviously LED from the start. We're at the point now that the original, or the retrofit kits that we purchased to do a lot of our lighting are to the point where, we need to replace them with actual LED technology. A light is designed around the source, and we took the source light that those lights were designed around, and we took and put a different source light in there, which they're efficient, but they're not throwing the light the direction you really want it to, I guess is the easy way to put it. So, so those early retrofit kits we did to get that 75% savings in utility usage are to the point now I'm starting to cycle those through with actually just replacing the fixture with an LED designed fixture. So, they make a lot
Retrofit
of-
again.
Retrofitting, yeah, well, it's kind of a retrofit to the retrofit. The only disadvantage is we're not gonna see that 75% utility savings the second time around, because, they do get more efficient, but now your big one was the first time. So now as we replace those original retrofit kits that we did, the LEDs are a little more efficient, but you're not gonna see 70% again. So you can maybe see 2 or 3%. So it's not like the big one the first time. It's
Just trying to hold the thing.
right, basically. So anyways, that's, we're about 75%, and, as we do a lot of projects, we're constantly upgrading that. And again, utility is, obviously we contract a lot of lights with public service, obviously. And they're in the process of, they're upgrading their technology also we don't dictate that to them, that's completely up to them. But when they're going to service lights that are out, or they're constantly in an upgrade mode to LED also, so. It doesn't save us any money, the monthly fee stays the same from the utility, but just citywide, they are upgrading their system also.
Those are regulated by PSC.
Right.
So the rates that they give us are not
They
negotiable.
come from the
rates.
Public Service Commission, right?
I think there was some discussion too about turning some of the streetlights back on in some of the neighborhoods, or was that discussed more in relation to neighborhoods?
Well, I would like to use it as an opportunity to segue to the street lighting budget as opposed to the electrical division, but in the interest of time, I think that's,
And again, they're two separate budgets, but you gotta kind of think of them the same, because again, I always point this out every year. Street lighting doesn't cover any of the labor that goes associated with it, or vehicle usage, so. Just, they kind of go hand in hand, even though they're separate.
Jim, what page is street lighting?
That is under 138.
So that's fairly static, but I think it brings up the question the mayor had.
Yeah, I think a couple years ago, we assumed a lot of that LED savings, but like Scooter said, now we're getting to the point where, we're not gonna be able to assume that every year, but last year we were still good budget-wise. We've been, which is kinda, I don't think a lot of citizens realize, street lighting's $1 million a year that we're spending on street lighting. So we do spend a lot of money on that. And looks like, in 17 and 18, we were just under $1 million. So the only projected increase is just the additional electricity costs.
Just that historical background, just quickly, I know we're time-wise, but back 10, 12 years ago, we started a light reduction program where we went and looked at all the utility-owned lights just because of the cost. If we wouldn't have done those reductions, we actually reduced the contracted lights with the utility by about half. So we had close to 10,000 utility-owned lights at various $20 to $25, $30 a month per light. And we reduced down to about 4,700 or so maybe. So again, if we wouldn't have done those reductions with their increases, we wouldn't be looking for $1 million for that budget right now. We'd probably be looking for about $4.5 million for that budget, without the reductions that we've done in the years past. So again, we're always kind of mindful of where lights are, and again, we do look at neighborhoods now. We're looking at our opportunity is obviously during road construction, is when we would look at possibly putting in city-owned lighting, which we have a little more control over the cost. Again, because then we're only paying, once the upfront cost for the infrastructure, the underground and the poles and the fixtures, now we go down to just paying the monthly utility fee, not all the other things that the PSC gives the utility. There's a lot of costs that go into a street light, It costs $2 a month to light, but we get charged $22 a month for it. So again, it's just one of those things, we're trying as we go along, moving forward, where it makes sense putting our own lights in. And then obviously, the utility-owned lights, we're kind of dictated by their pole lines. Where they have poles, where they have overhead, where we could put a light, can we put a light on that one? How does it space out? Again, there's a lot of,
Those that have been turned off can be turned back on.
Most of them have been removed.
they've been removed, we can't just turn them off,
Yeah.
they've been removed.
Yes.
So in order for us to, if we would entertain putting lights back in, the utility has a new fee structure, so it's a little bit different now, where before we paid for, I'll just call it a light and everything associated with the light. Now, if we want to add a light in, we can surely add a light in. It starts a new 2-year contract with the utility, and then now we pay, you pay for the arm that holds the light up, you pay for the light fixture. So they changed their fee structure to get a little bit more out of it. So again, we can add lights in. The big thing is every light we add in, we got to remember that it goes into that street lighting budget, and then now it turns into a multiplier for years
Great
and years and years
neighborhoods.
and years.
This goes to a conversation that the mayor and I had, and it's no different than anything any other neighborhood could do, but would purchasing streetlights be an appropriate use of great neighborhoods money? And I would argue that yes, it would be. The only operational thing is what Scooter just said. It would result, let's say a neighborhood wanted to buy 10 streetlights, just throw out a number. Those 10 streetlights, the capital cost, if we purchase them, they were installed, we'd own them, we wouldn't have to pay the public service, or the Public Service Commission lease rates, for lack of a better term. Purchase,
Just pay for usage.
but that would.
And maintenance.
But that would come into this, no different than when somebody says we want to do something at a park.
Yep.
That raises Ray's budget. This one would raise Scooter's budget. So I mean, it's just recognizing that. But I know, I mean, the mayor and I have had multiple conversations about street lighting in neighborhoods. And, so many of the neighborhoods have focused on parks. It doesn't have to be limited to parks for the great neighborhoods
The only
expenditure.
difference with that would be is, obviously, you would want to try and target that with a street construction project, reconstruction project, just because purchasing the lights is one thing, but then now you have all the other infrastructure that has to go in. So if you're trying to do it in an existing neighborhood, now you go from your underground installation during construction is very much minimized because you have sidewalks are out, driveways are out. But if you go into an existing neighborhood, now you're looking at pretty much everything has to mostly be bored in. And boring, you go from $4 a foot to have a conduit put into, $38, $40 a foot. So it almost goes 4 times, 10 times the cost, so.
In the interest of time, it's not going to have an immediate impact on the budget,
Yeah.
but I thought, the mayor and I have had that discussion. I think it's.
I mean, it's doable, it's just a matter of anything we
The cost.
do.
So it's not just this getting increased for the electrical and the usage, it's the installation. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into it, right?
Yep.
So
Okay.
again,
Great.
Great
Thank you.
neighborhoods could be the capital.
right.
This would be the ongoing. Is there anything else?
No, that's,
Anything on the we've got the lighting replacement stuff. in
yeah,
the
it's all
capital.
the capital, it's all the standard stuff other than replacing one service vehicle.
Any other, or are those all your budgets, Jim?
That's it.
You got, just what that, one that I haven't seen in all the years of looking at the budget, this replace conflict monitor?
Oh, sure.
Oh,
Skip.
the
15 grand?
Our
Yeah,
conflict
that's-
monitor, in order to stay compliant, we have to test. The conflict monitor is the watchdog in all our traffic signal cabinets.
Okay.
When we program a controller for an intersection, we want it to do a certain thing, obviously. And so the watchdog, the monitor in the cabinet makes sure that you don't have 2 greens on, or 2 permissive moves on, and in order for us to make something happen, we have to actually go in there and solder jumper wires into a circuit board, which tells the monitor, okay, it's okay if these 2 green lights are on, but if it sees anything else, boom, it's out. So in order to stay compliant, the monitors need to be tested yearly, and we could surely pay someone to come in and do it, but it's very expensive. So we do own a monitor tester now. It's quite old, and we're not able to test for the new the flashing yellows that you're seeing everywhere. So our monitor tester's not able to test for the flashing yellow.
I viewed this as a safety issue.
It is,
So we
and-
need
No,
to-
I was just curious, it's the first time I've seen it.
And it's
that's all.
basically
Well, it's
exactly.
because the last time we purchased it was probably over 10 years ago. And again, and we do that, and there's a flip side to it, that as long as we, the company that, it's really only one company that makes the monitor tester. So as long as you do your yearly monitor testing and you're within a year, and we send it in every year for calibration. So
Sure.
it's calibrated yearly. Then in usually December and January, we're doing our testing. This year, obviously, we have to wait until next year. But if for some reason the monitor failed and something happened in the field where you did have 2 permissive moves and an accident, and there was, some liability in there, not only the city's obviously liable because there are traffic signals, but because we're within that calibration window and we've done the proper testing, ATSI is also in on that as a partner with us. They guarantee their equipment, basically. So if there's a litigation, they would be involved with us, just not the city of Oshkosh.
Okay.
So it's basically just what it says.
Yeah.
It ensures that you don't have a conflict like 2
Right.
green lights on it.
Right,
Right.
and again, it's a piece of equipment that, I think the last time and again, there's a trade-in value to our old one, so it'll be traded in, and, but again, it's about every 10 years, and we do software upgrades. The newer ones are now, hardware-wise, you're able to do software upgrades instead of replacing the whole unit, so.
All right.
Just, it's a necessary expense for traffic signals in the long run, so.
Yeah, no, I'm,
Right.
it's
And
fine.
like I said,
What
we
do you
could,
think?
we could have, we could have a company come in and do all our testing for us.
But it'd be expensive.
Very expensive, a lot, and it's a lot cheaper just to have our, and again, in January, you know, December, January, March, or February, you know, a lot of times we're not able to do a lot of other projects, so it is time consuming, and, you know, it's, one guy's, you know, basically, quite a bit of time is spent on it.
All right.
But it does keep us out of hot water, I guess.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Wrap up, Scooter.
I'm
Yep.
done.
Yep.
All right.
We're only put you 10 minutes behind.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Our next department is museum. Brad Larson's been patiently waiting. Thanks, Brian,
Glad we
thanks.
don't have public works today
Jim,
after
Scooter.
the snowfall last night.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear about adding more salt to the budget after.
I was more worried
Better
about,
not
when I was
salt
driving
it.
in this morning, I wasn't as worried about salt as I was about trees.
Oh, yeah,
The
they're
weight
laying all
of
over.
the, there were a lot of branches that
The
looked just,
overpasses on 41 were also,
Yeah.
it's the, whatever, however all.
players and stuff.
No, like Witzel coming over 41,
Yeah,
sheer ice, 9th Street, sheer ice. The moment you hit the roundabout, completely dry, but just that overpass with the
oh,
open
interesting.
underneath.
You know, it
Just
was-
a nice
I
rate.
guess it was a little,
Oh, I'm in Enterprise.
it was pretty dead when I drove in, but, oh, yeah.
Just,
Interesting.
it's natural. It's one of those things.
Oh, no, bridge freezes first. Oh, it's because there's that cold air
The
underneath.
moisture, the moisture or the, yeah,
Wow.
cold air.
All right, Brad,
All right, you
You're
never,
so
right.
patient.
you never know how long it's gonna be when you follow Scooter, you know.
I think last year he sat here for like 60 seconds.
Bob and I were
he
talking
got out
about
of
what a
here last
transit
year.
expert Scooter was, so he just.
Yeah, he sounded more like an engineer at one point than he did an electrician.
So we're in that quality of life category. We're on page 157.
Excellent.
So the museum has been around for 95 years, and I think we're actually on our third or maybe even our fourth strategic plan. So we're making good headway, steady headway, maybe not as fast as we'd like. And our performance indicators that are in there, the key performance indicators, are really the ones that we think measure the best progress on that strategic plan. So we also, in addition to the budget, which I'll talk about in just a sec, we have 3 enhancements and we have 3 capital improvements that we'll talk about as well. So like most of the other departments, there's not really been any major changes to our budget other than in that personnel category. That's really where you see it primarily. So it's pretty much steady as it was last year. This is a good time to talk about the enhancement. We have 3 enhancements that would be reflected in here, and the two of the enhancements in particular are tied to my operating budget, and that is next year we intend to bring a major exhibition to the museum. And we don't have the contract signed yet, but we're very close. We've been going back and forth with the firm. And if we are successful with that, which I believe we will need additional staff. So these are temporary or LTE staff, front-line staff, reception, admissions, that sort of thing, as well as additional cost for my staff, or like janitorial, overtime, that sort of thing, related to having a lot of people in the building. Those enhancements would be paid for the revenue that we would generate from the exhibition. The exhibition is called Titanic, the Wisconsin Connection. And this exhibition is actually being developed specifically for the Oshkosh Public Museum. It's not an out-of-the-box sort of a thing, and it'll focus on the 50-plus people who were on Titanic that were either from Wisconsin or were immigrating to Wisconsin for a number of reasons. It also has some secondary themes in there of industrialization and immigration, as well as the story of the ship and the people from Wisconsin. But I expect it's going to be really busy, and we're going to need those additional people during the duration of that exhibit, and that we would pay for from the revenue that's generated from admissions.
We're looking at, if I total them up, a little over 18,000. Limited term, as you mentioned.
I think it's actually less than that, isn't it? For the I think if you...
Oh, you know what, I added
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
never
if you
mind.
look just at the
Yep.
limited term, I think it's around 12.
Yeah, sorry, my bad,
Right.
my math. Yep.
I was
But
using
offset
your
by-
math, I was
I
using
forgot-
your math.
The assistant
map.
director curator part is what I added in.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like that's connected to this.
No, that is not connected to that, but we can talk about that now if you want. So I believe Mr. Fitzpatrick was going to talk to this as well, but
He's
we.
right behind you.
He is, very
Attempting to
good.
find a path
You can
up
talk
there.
about it,
Yeah.
Brad, it's okay.
What?
You can talk about it,
Okay.
it's okay.
So the museum had an assistant director position until 2014 budget. And then beginning in January 1st, 2014, we lost the assistant director position. So what the enhancement is to assign administrative or assistant director responsibilities to one of my staff members, the curator of collections, so that there is somebody that the staff can go to when I am not there. Right now, Mr. Fitzpatrick is the one that generally the staff will call if there's some issue that needs to be resolved or something signed. There's nobody on staff with that responsibility.
And that becomes a desperate situation when it gets down to me, of course.
We know that. You don't have to
I
explain
didn't
that.
know you had museum background.
Right.
So the cost to do this is relatively modest. It's about $5,000. The position is actually funded by the Duro Trust. So the position, major responsibilities are all funded through the trust, but the trust purpose does not fund administrative. So the additional cost for being the assistant director would have to be pulled from this tax levy, so at about $5,000.
How much, well, since you mentioned that Mr. Fitzpatrick is getting calls every once in a while, he's filling in, he's doing multiple duties. How often, how much time is actually devoted, to doing those types of things?
It's not significant for me. It's when Brad's not available, certainly. But there are also a lot of things that are specific to the museum in regard to history, the technical aspects of the museum, and I do the best I can to try to help. But I'm not probably the best resource for staff, as good as someone who's technically in that field could be. And also Brad, has a wealth of knowledge based on all of his experience at the museum. And I know we've talked, many times about, his ability to share that knowledge with someone else. And we certainly hope that Brad stays as long as he wants to with the city. But I think, his desire to also share that information and help develop and, think about succession planning and make sure that the museum is in good stead and think forward. Those are all concerns that Brad has expressed to me. And I think, they're valid.
So adding somebody to the supervisory ranks without adding an additional position, basically, is that enhancement?
Absolutely.
That's
Is that
the
a fair
real,
amount?
yeah.
Fair way to?
And we
Yeah.
can't use the Duro money.
Yep,
I mean,
understood.
it's a stretch with some of the use of Duro funds, and we don't want to take advantage of that. This is clearly for the administration of the museum, rather than directly benefiting the Germanic
Yeah.
glass collection.
The trust is really specific. But, John mentioned this, and I actually wasn't going to bring this up, but there needs to be that bridge, there needs to be that transition. And even though right now I don't have any plans to retire, it is in the future, and it's really important for me to lay the groundwork for that succession planning. The person that we have in mind has already served as a director at her previous institution, so she already has some knowledge of what goes on a day-to-day basis. So this would be, I think, a very effective way to build that bridge for whenever that time comes.
I think it'd be more appropriate to have a 100-year-old director as a prime artifact at the museum. So clearly, they didn't tell you that retirement isn't an option.
No.
I was, this morning, Bill Belichick was talking about coaching till 70. Coaching until the 100th anniversary of the museum would be totally okay with
Great.
me.
Well, it's coming up.
But I think Brad's
Five
wife has
years.
more to say about that than council and I do.
Well, everybody, I think, would know that your spouse has a lot to do with that. Let it go at that.
Yep.
What I don't want to get too optimistic with the revenues.
It looks
That's
pretty promising.
it is, but it's promising. I wouldn't slam dunk it.
Can't predict it.
What I would suggest, because I think there's value to getting the assistant director position integrated into the organization so that people can become used to going to the assistant director when Brad's not out. I mean, Fitz has been very helpful and everything, but the fact that the museum has to call City Hall rather than just go down the hall when they need direction when Brad's,
Yeah.
takes a vacation day.
And I do check in, so it's not like the staff is without communication, but it's just not, I think, as effective as it could be.
Brad's a hunter. You're not gonna get cell service everywhere Brad goes.
Yeah, tell me about that.
What I would suggest is, I'm in support of all three, but I felt it was appropriate to not get optimistic about the revenues. The revenues, I would say, don't budget in excess of what's being proposed here on the expenditure side. Matt threw out he just added up to 18,000. Put 18,000 offset revenue and put this 18,000 in. The only ongoing cost after that will be the 5,400 for the assistant director, and we'll see how successful the Titanic
Right.
Wisconsin
How
connection is.
successful has that been in other communities?
Well, it's a very long story. The last time it was here, 13 years ago, it was exceptionally successful here, and we generated at least 200,000, maybe a little bit more. But Titanic, as a company, went through bankruptcy, and now they have emerged on the other side, a smaller, more nimble company. And they realized that the big blockbuster type exhibitions are pretty much dead. They're not as common as they used to be. So now what they're focused on is creating smaller, more focused exhibitions for mid-size museums like ours. And so we're one of the first that they're working with. For us, it has advantages simply because of the limitations of the building that we can get it in there. However, because it is focused on Wisconsin and it's very specific to this state, and it's based a lot on our research that my curator did, we think it's going to have statewide appeal. So we think we're going to have a very good attendance, a strong attendance. And because it's pretty far out, we wouldn't open it until mid-August. We have a long time to market it. And that's the key.
Does the museum, and I'm sure there's already some connections here, but, and the CVB, like, work together on those kinds of things? for
Yeah,
those kind of
I was just gonna bring that
packages?
up. They now have joined Circle-Wide tour bus, state of Wisconsin, so they're in that, where they add attractions to the tour bus people. So Oshkosh is probably gonna be a site.
And we
for-
signed an agreement with the firm EM Group that we really can't engage in that until we have a signed contract. So that's one of the reasons why we're kind of chomping at the bit to get this signed contract. And as I said, we went back and forth. There were things in there that we didn't agree with. But I think we're now to the point where there's just a few minor things. So we'll be able to sign soon. And once we sign, then we can begin that sort of
Correct, and they're
conversations.
the Grand's part. They're all part of the Grand, the museum,
Yeah.
Payne. They're all part of this collaboration.
But I also think too, a huge opportunity would be through the university, because
Yes.
there was just Parents' Day here for homecoming. A lot of parents were asking what to do in town. So of course, you said, go to the museum, go to the Payne, those types of things. But I'm wondering if maybe some more, networking, marketing with the university, because there's also, when the kids move on campus, many of the parents from out of state, out of the area are spending 1 or 2 nights here.
I have a new marketing person. She just joined the staff at the end of July, and she is full of really great ideas. She's already made contact with Convention and Visitor Bureau in a number of places in town. We've seen a pretty significant rise in awareness of the museum just since she's been on staff, so I suspect she'll probably follow up on things like that.
Just another question, I guess going back to the kind of KPIs on attendance. Are our school group numbers back up? I know they had kind of lagged. Are they still down, or are they picking up in terms of school groups?
They are down for Oshkosh schools. They are up for out of the area schools. Now, one thing I'll point out, the school district had a very large turnover in teachers. So we think that was part of the reasons why we had a lag in local school groups. However, now we are working with the school district very closely to change that, improve that. And we have, the school district just adopted the new state curriculum, which is really focused for us on third grade. So we modified our tours, and we are working with a group of teachers to change our tour format to match the curriculum. That's going great. We're really making good progress on that. The other thing is we're working with 8th graders, primarily from Traeger and Webster Stanley on National History Day. And in November, my staff will be doing presentations in the morning and in the afternoon to the 8th graders on how to make effective public presentations and effective exhibitions. How do you reach a general audience using images and stories and things like that? So it's a big commitment on our part, but overall, I think that we are on the upswing with the school district. And I should point out that students in the Oshkosh Area School District do not pay a fee to attend the museum.
Oh,
Now, students outside the district do pay that fee, but if you're in the district, the students are free.
is that only as a school group or even if they're with a family member?
No, it's a school group, including homeschoolers. However, if a student is coming in to use the archives because they're doing some kind of a school project, they don't pay. All they need to do is show their school ID. And we're actually pretty liberal with it. If we're going to err, we're erring on the side of giving them free admission.
And what kind of revenue is a school district paying in November?
They don't pay. This is a free service. So that's pretty much my my operating budget. I have a couple of other budgets. I have a membership budget and a collections budget. The membership is on page 142. One of the bellwethers of the health of the museum is the number of members that we have, and we always hover right around 500, which is a good number. It's kind of our baseline number. But we have seen an increase in the number of members, and we're actually going to be using our new exhibition to encourage membership. But the reason that this is so important, it is the membership program that enables us to do so many things that meet our mission. So they pay for things like the programming, our new enrichment series, which has been fantastically successful. They pay for our exhibitions. They pay for projects like the fire bell that's going to be installed down at the Otter Street station. They are the ones that really are the kind of the prime supporters of all the projects that we do. So the health of the membership program is always really important, and we monitor this budget really carefully. We don't want to overspend it because it is the way that we get things done, more or less. It's also kind of the holding. So when we get a grant or something, it goes into the membership fund, and then it's dispersed from there, transferred to the operating as the expenses are incurred. There's really nothing out of the ordinary there, but I did want to point out that the membership program is a key part of the museum operations, and it's very healthy.
So just a question on that then, so if in 2018 the actuals are at 128, in 2019 we were significantly down.
It has to do with those gifts and the things that we transfer in.
Okay.
And the membership program also supports our assistant curator position. So that is also supported by a number of different things. And sometimes we get grants and gifts, and those are all transferred through the membership fund.
Yeah, you'll see the state aid other for 2018, wasn't that a GEM grant?
I can't remember exactly, but any kind of fund or grant like that is put into the membership.
We're kind of hoping we can apply for a GEM grant with the
Yeah.
Titanic, Wisconsin connection. That could change things. We might actually come back if we got that, but happy to come back when there's good news.
That's the good kind of coming back.
You like coming to those meetings?
Yeah, I
like
do.
those.
I like those, yeah. And then if there's no other operating or membership type questions, I would like to speak to capital. So our capital projects are on page 45, 46. We have 3 projects. One is the sporting and recreation exhibition, which is a permanent exhibition or long-term, and that is the actual fabrication and installation of that, which we will probably work on next year, but because of Titanic, the actual opening would be 2021, but these things have a very long lead time. There's a lot of work involved. We have the foundation repair of the Sawyer home and then site restoration. That's a big chunk of money, but the site has to be regraded, and we want to make sure that that regrading is done to make sure it matches the site master plan and to do correct drainage away from the museum. The foundation repair is going to be a pretty major project. We're going to put a sump pump in there as well as fixing the actual limestone block. So we've allowed a pretty good amount of money, $200,000. And then elevator modernization is pretty straightforward. It's an old elevator, relatively speaking, 82. But it does have some issues, and these are upgrades to modernize it. But what I would really like to talk about is a project that was not funded, that was pulled, and that is the next phase of doing the Steiger wing modification and expansion. So in this year, we're just finishing up on design development, which was $225,000, and we're working with Ingberg Anderson Architects out of Milwaukee. So this is a very intense project, but it's one that is important because it pulls on a great amount of staff expertise, and not just my expertise, but the expertise of other staff that have been there for a long time. So we've gone through design development, and that's pretty much finished. The next phase is to turn all that design development into the blueprints and the specifications that are necessary for bidding. And it would be easiest to seamlessly just slip into that next phase and get it done, and then we will have a shovel-ready project for whenever funds are available. And I'd like to point out that even though we may not have the money right now to do those modifications to the Steiger wing, it is only a matter of time when the wing has to be changed to maintain a viable museum. It may be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, but the wing has to change in order to maintain a viable museum. And so to have this project ready to roll, I think would be a really good accomplishment for myself personally. I'd really like to see it done. And if we have that delay and then new staff comes, it's very hard to remobilize that and then get that back in order and get it to where it needs to be. And of course, there's going to be cost increases, just like any capital improvement that's delayed from one year to the other. It's not unique to this particular project. But if I could encourage the council to please think about this and consider it as a project to fund for 2020, that would be a wonderful thing. We would like to get this project done and ready to roll. And my board sent you a letter about it, also encouraging you to please consider it.
You said we already invested just under $250,000 in the conceptual phase?
No, design development.
Design development phase.
So conceptual was the year, or 2 years prior to that. Design development is working out all of the necessary details and floor layouts and the mechanicals and the electricals.
This is really a matter of money, and Brad and I have had many, just soul-searching discussions. The items that are in the CIP are items directly related to making sure that the existing facility functions, the foundation repair, the elevator modernization. We need to do those things to make sure that Brad can keep showing up in the morning without worrying about flooding in the basement. And that's not an exaggeration. That's anytime there's any water out in the ground, Brad's got to go in and double check. This stuff goes a little bit beyond that. The Steiger wing expansion, there are some ADA issues. Those are legitimate. if you've ever had a guest who has mobility issues visiting the museum, you know it. I mean, it's a legitimate issue. It's just a matter of, we've got $3 million in projects that are not funded. So this is probably the first one that really is kind of jumping out at you. But that's where Russ put together, we presented a $12.5 million borrowing plan. That's when somebody asked, why do you have $15 million in there, Russ? It's because we need to take a look at some of these things, and council's got to wrestle with every one of these that are being brought before you.
So that being said, how does that go against our debt then? I mean, are we gonna be exceeding our own policy, or are we gonna be right there?
Well, we haven't developed our new policy. Our current policy is still,
That was more disciplined than a policy.
70% by
I mean, it's
2020.
still flexible, right.
So we did it. We should be very pleased and proud of doing that 3 years early. So now we're close to 60%. And the growth that Russ cited, we're, with the growth we had in our equalized value, we're probably going to be hitting near 60. But now we're saying, is that the only thing? And that's, I think, where Russ is coming in.
Yeah, I think the decision point for council is not your percentage of allowable debt. I think you're well on your way to getting to your goals of 50% of the legal debt limit. My concern as the finance director and recommendation to you is there's some other factors. And number one, started with the discussion of how much of our levy is going towards debt. And, I think there's some other factors where you might want to look at your levy requirements, not only for 2020, but going into the future, of how much of our levy is going towards debt repayment. And so long-range finance is looking at some of these other factors to develop more of a comprehensive policy other than that one measurement tool. And we're hoping to have that all wrapped up pretty soon. But I think that's going to be your biggest sticking point going forward, because as we have limitations on our tax levy, and as we have that pressure on the tax levy, more and more communities like Oshkosh are going towards debt to finance things. And when you do that, your percentage of levy going towards debt payment goes higher and higher. And there's a point where that's okay and healthy, but there's a point where that might not be healthy for you. We're already at that, I think it was 30-some%.
31, I think.
Going towards debt payment of our levy. And, how high, what's our tolerance level? Mm-hmm. So, but that being said, we did model a little bit higher debt going into the future. We looked at some different options of, do we stick at this magical $12.5 million? Can we fluctuate that from time to time based on the needs of the city? So, there may be times when that could go higher, and we actually did a placeholder at 15 million. And you can make those decisions each year, but we were trying to look at not only on the debt limit, but on the other factors, what that means going forward.
The only other thing I would say is, over the years, I've watched various councils agonize over these kind of decisions about prioritizing certain projects, and I understand it's a tough thing, but as a director, I have to advocate for this project. It's my job, so.
Sure.
Just a question, Brad, on the Deep Roots exhibition.
Yes.
There's reference in there to a flexible multi-use space.
Yes.
So this would be this is just a conceptual plan for that?
Well, it's not conceptual, it's actually, we're putting it into practice right now. So Deep Roots Growing City, which is not funded, will be our new long-term exhibit, and that will be placed in what we now call the Red Gallery, if you remember the second floor of the Sawyer home. So the new permanent long-term exhibit will be placed in that gallery. That will then free the second floor Steiger wing, which is now Memories and Dreams and has to be removed. So the Memories and Dreams gallery would become the flexible use facility.
And that would allow more revenue, right?
Yes, and the value of moving them is the Sawyer home has floor loading issues. The Steiger wing doesn't have floor loading issues. So we can put a lot more type of traveling type exhibits in a flexible use facility in the Steiger wing than we can in the Sawyer home, simply because of that floor loading issue. But the flexible use facility also enables us to divide it into rooms. Like if you think of this room with its divider in the back, well, we don't have a room like that. And now with our enhancement, our enrichment programs, which are really going great, we're using every little spot we can. If we had one room like that that we could divide, it would be so much better just from a logistical point of view.
And that could be rented out for
We could rent that out,
for
yes.
different events?
Right. Right now, our one room that we do rent out is the lecture room, and that's the only one that we're able to rent out. And it's relatively small. It's 700 square feet.
So, would this be a space, visually speaking, that would be, I don't know, somebody wants to have a wedding or
No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be suitable for that.
Learning environment?
Right. It doesn't have any windows, any grandeur, any woodwork. It's a gallery space. It's more like a box space.
Does the museum do any of those kind of private events like that?
Generally, no. We have a lot of wedding photographs out on the grounds, but we don't charge for that because the museum is very much like a park setting. And actually, if you talk with folks in the Sawyer Payne Neighborhood Association, they view the museum as a little park for their neighborhood, which is great. It's wonderful. So people come to the exterior of the museum and they have their wedding photographs or graduation. But inside, we don't do very much. We're not really set up for that.
This is the opening of debt management issues. Sorry for Brad to have to be that first person out there, but obviously, they've got a lot of ambitious plans. So, sorry to lay that on you, guilt trip, but look at poor Brad.
No, I think it goes back to conversations we've had over the years, though. We never want to have one of our city-owned buildings be in a situation like the Grand was. And then all of a sudden, you don't budget for a significant event. And the other thing, too, is we obviously have partners, in town, stakeholders in town that, obviously have had buildings that there was no pre-planning for how you're going to keep it relevant. And then when the time comes to have to make some tough decisions, the community, obviously for good reason, becomes in an uproar. So I think, although it's a tough conversation to have, and yeah, poor Brad is, the first one on, it's still one of those ones that is relevant and we still need to have.
The other thing that, this is just sort of a thought that I've had. Brad has talked about the participation from the schools. This might be a discussion to have with the school board in terms of how can we make our library and museum both more successful. Brad has representation of the school board, and Jeff does also on the library board, but the engagement of the schools in our own facilities. Brad has great participation from Nina schools.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not a matter of money because Nina's paying, and they're very satisfied.
Yeah. And our reach is really expanding. We had a tour last week, or maybe it was the week before, from Lodi High School there, and that's a new one for us. We've never had a high school or any school group from Lodi before, and that's a pretty good, trip for the school.
What about the parochial schools in the Oshkosh area? Do they get engaged with the museum at all?
And a little bit, mainly at the 3rd and 4th grade level, not the high school level.
Okay.
But I think getting the kids in the door, then, the kids can run home and say, Mom, Dad, look what I found out today. Oh, why don't we go check that out as a family
Well,
type of thing. I mean, that's the idea.
Well, Lego exhibit was very, very popular.
Yeah, that was really a good one. We had a lot of kids there. And we have a new educational link on our website. We had an intern over the summer paid for through the membership, and they worked with the school district and developed those hands-on curriculum-based ties from the museum collections and exhibitions, and now it's all available as a download on the website, and we know it's been used because we talked to the Neenah schools about it, and they used it. So that's a really big plus for us for a teacher or a student to be able to go to the website and get all the information they need on post and pre and post visit activities in one place.
And it's really, I mean, even with some of the more recent exhibits, like the Cemetery Tales, that interactivity with the technology and kind of old meets new, we had 3 generations at that, and it was a very refreshing update.
It's a hard thing because some of our visitors are the traditional visitors that would prefer to read labels. On the other hand, we have a generation of visitors who don't want to read labels and they want everything in a digital format. And we embrace both of those, and we try to serve both. And museums are kind of in a transition right now, and eventually I'm sure it'll all move to a platform that's digital based. But right now we're still in that medium kind of mix.
And where the library is.
Yeah,
Well, it's nice to see your attendance up
it is.
second quarter.
Yes, and there was some discussion about our attendance, but Cemetery Tales has really been wonderful, and so is our enhancement program. We had intended to launch our enrichment program series in January, but we had some staff change turnover, so we actually didn't launch it until spring. And generally, it takes a good year and a half, maybe 2 years, when you do a program series to make it into a full-fledged, actively attended program series. But for whatever reason, boy, I'll tell you, ours really took off. And we've had pretty maxed out at many of our programs. Part of it is just the diversity that we're offering. We're doing things on many different topics. So we have been very pleased, and we think that we can continue that, and that's been a good revenue source for us as well. So that's reflected in our miscellaneous revenue. So just from the program series alone, since we launched it, we've had at least $5,000 in income, maybe more than that.
And then, Brad, one more question. Are there joint programs between the library and the museum that there's like a linkage?
You bet. We actually have a very good and growing program with them for cross-promotion. And we work with the library not only on the programming part of it, but then the reading part of it. So we will offer a reading list to visitors on a certain subject. So it's been a good partnership, and our new marketing person is really the one that's taking that on.
Well, looks like we're ahead of schedule.
Yay.
Hey? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fire at 10:15, so.
Short break. Longer break.
$1 goal. I mean, send your kid to school with $1 for the admission to the museum, pay for the field trip.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard all the time. Well,
About quality of school.
The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly.
Okay. So, excuse me. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you
morning.
again.
Morning.
That if you'll indulge me in, I put together some information for you to supplement all the other budgets and data and stuff that you have, and just take some time to walk through that. You know, I should be able to address the operating budget, the enhancements, the capital improvement plan, as well as weave the KPIs in there as well. Yeah, so 2019 thus far has been a great year for the fire department. We've had many significant accomplishments that we've been able to get done, but wanted to just highlight a few to go over. You know, one of the most significant things we did is we completed that comprehensive staffing study at the direction of council. That council had the vision to commission that. We found that to be very valuable in some validating some of our internal thoughts and suspicions, but also to have that external validation of, you know, where do we need to go to meet the current needs of the city and our community, and what does that look like in the future. You know, one of the recommendations that came out of that was that fleet maintenance should be shifted to the Department of Public Works. You know, we've talked about that in the staffing study workshop. I referenced it a little bit yesterday, but we made that transition earlier on this year. You know, and are starting to reap a lot of really good benefit from that. And that, you know, we'll start to see some improvements in our KPI secondary to that. Now, one of the things that when you look at that KPI around fleet, you know, that we set the indicator for the first line fire apparatus, our first line response vehicles to be in service 90% of the time. You know, so, you know, that's probably a little low number industry standard wise, but, you know, we want to have, you know, there are our best and newest units in service, providing the protection to our city. And you see in that KPI that we're right there at teetering around the 90%. You know, and we have some concerns historically over that number being valid because of the process. You know, and what was happening was we were taking that frontline rig, putting a Band-Aid back on it to put it right back online because we did not have the depth of reserve status apparatus, you know, that we were understaffed in that mechanics division. So we were just constantly churning those rigs, and they weren't getting the preventative maintenance. They weren't getting to have the time that needs to be spent to dig into that. So with that move, you know, Chief Zemer has been working with very closely hand in hand with the central garage to more accurately track what is our in-service times for those rigs. And we conducted emergency management training citywide. That we've been focusing a lot of attention to that area, and I'll speak more to that as we talk more about our strategic plan. And we completed a citywide emergency operations center exercise. You know, I had emailed the results out to the council a couple weeks ago for our fire prevention month. We go out annually, do the Detector trek, where we install detectors, replace batteries, check smoke detectors in the homes in our community, and we had a record year for that, and I'll speak a little more to that later as well. As of the end of September, we had responded to 6,695 incidents. That we're projecting at the end of the year that we will have responded to just under 9,000 responses, which will be a high for us. And we're still seeing that continuous rate of increase as we start to increase population and other issues in the community, that we're still seeing the call incident request, the demand for our service to increase as well. So we're nearing a 10% jump over the last 5 years, which is very significant. Moving on to the next page, our objectives for 2020, that we want to relocate an apparatus so that an aerial is located at Station 15. That when you look at population density, you also look at height of buildings. Do we have a aerial device, something with a big ladder on the top of it, to reach those buildings in our downtown area? And right now at Station 15, we do not. So that would necessitate us to move the Quint, which has that aerial apparatus, from Station 14 at the airport into that downtown area. And I'll speak more to this in our enhancements as well. We have an objective, and that's relocating the apparatus. That's going to be done to provide a more safe and secure, healthy community, and primarily more safe. That, again, as we have those office structures, hotels, residential structures, that if, should we have a fire and people are at the windows, we need to be able to reach them. So that's a move really designed around the safety and the response force being there at the right time in the right place. We want to create a staff and civilian management analyst position, create and staff a civilian management analyst position, and that will enhance the effectiveness of our city government, provide a safe and secure, healthy community as well. And I'll talk more about that in the enhancement package too. Now, I had the opportunity to speak with you a little bit yesterday about transferring the management and maintenance of facilities to administrative service so that we can improve and maintain our infrastructure and enhance our effectiveness. And we would like to recommend that we would discontinue non-emergency medical transfers so it enhances our effectiveness and it enhances our ability to provide a safe and secure, healthy community. Continuing on, we've broken it down to our different objectives within the strategic plan. That our first objective is to enhance community trust and public safety. And I'd like to talk a little bit about what we've done, reference that. As I was just speaking about, we did have a record year for Detector trek. And when you review those numbers that we've published, they're very alarming and very concerning. The number of domiciles or residences in this city that have no smoke detector, no fire alarm system at all. So there is also a shocking trend of that smoke detector that is in place is out of date, the battery's not in it, the battery's dead, that so many folks in our community do not have the recommended, and just basic level needs for alerting them if there's smoke or a fire in their home. And these are life-saving devices. That this is going to be what alerts somebody to exit the house early on in the fire growth stage, so it increases their survivability exponentially. So very concerning that so many people do not have that capability and that protection. So this is an area we would like to see where we're able to spend more time, spend more focus on this, and continue our work that we've done around fire prevention for decades here in this community, and continuing to meet that need. And this ties back to the discussion yesterday of our fire marshal that heads up our fire prevention office. I think we would all certainly want him spending more time addressing issues like this than the fact that the toilet at Station 16 is clogged. So we really need to realign so that we can stay in the space we need to be in. This year we were invited to participate in Coffee with a Cop program. It was a fantastic opportunity for us to be out in the community, see our partners in public safety, let the community see us partnering with PD, our other partners and colleagues in public safety, to see that we have a great working relationship, and give them the opportunity to interact with us in a different capacity than they normally do. We successfully conducted a Fire Ops 101 program this year that we think was very, very successful and very impactful. And we are already working on scheduling one for next year. So if you missed this past one, don't fret. We'll give you another opportunity next year. And some of you may have seen something new we did this year, that on the back of the Oshkosh Herald, they have the Kids Scoop section. That's a pretty impressive program that reaches almost 1,000 children in our school district. So it's more than just play with something on the back of the paper. There's lesson plans associated with that. And for the first time, we put some fire prevention messaging in there in October. So we were able to reach another 800 to 1,000 children and adults as well in a means that we had not had previously. So we thought that was very exciting for us. Our next objective would be strengthen the relationships with neighborhood organizations and diverse community groups. We have continued participation in National Night Out. That gives us the ability to have our staff interact with the groups in the neighborhood, and also lets them get to know their firefighters, because we're sending the firefighters from the stations located in their neighborhood so that they have that sense of ownership and that sense of belonging, that these are our firefighters. These are the people that will protect me. So we'll continue to participate in that every year. We had a table at participate in the Unity and Community event so that we could broaden our reach to a different demographic than we may have been reaching before, and to show that we are vested in being a community partner, that we are interested in cultural diversity, and we are interested in serving everybody equally, and trying to identify what shortcomings or gaps there might be in the services that we're providing. We also participated in the Senior Expo. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to community risk reduction. And the fire department became a member of the Firefighter Diversity Recruitment Council. And we're spending a lot of time in the recruitment space. I'll speak to that when we get to the portion about recruiting a workforce.
Just a quick question, Chief Seeley.
Absolutely.
At those national night outs or any of these other events, do the staff also do like smoke detector distribution and also recruiting in those moments as well, or those events?
Yeah, we typically don't distribute smoke detectors because we do not, as a practice, just hand them out, for several reasons. Yeah, we want to install them. So we schedule the appointments with them to come to them and install them. And we also do use that as a active recruiting tool, to expose people of all ages in our community to the opportunities that exist not only in the fire service but public safety. So, like I said, I'll reference that. I'll tell you a little bit more about the recruiting effort here momentarily, because I know that's an interest you and I have talked about. One of the objectives we changed in the strategic plan at our workshop a little over a year ago was implementing strategies for risk reduction. And I've talked to council before, and I've been very vocal in the community about our biggest community risk right now. Obviously we're going to continue fire prevention and public education around those things, because that's a key mission for us. But our biggest risk is fall prevention. So we have put together a community-wide task force, that has been very active. We applied for some funding from the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation, received that funding to dive deeper into this, to develop a strategic plan for our community of how do we address that epidemic. Because we really are seeing that number is a staggering number now and continuing to trend upwards. So we want to attack that issue, move the needle on that before we start broadening out to other reduction efforts surrounding community risk. So we're piloting some programs right now as part of that project that we identified our top 100 super users in the community. So if for you to make the top 100, that meant that in 2018 you fell and needed our assistance to get back up 3 times or more. I think the highest number, if I recall off the top of my head, was 19 times in a year. So it's a big issue. So we've contacted them via mailer, to connect them with the Public Health Department here in Winnebago County. Didn't get the desired response that we would want, so we're readjusting that pilot to go out and pay them a visit and do a warm handoff to the Health Department. We are piloting an application right now at the Fire Department in our documentation system, where if somebody has fallen, we talk to them about, would you be okay with us getting some information from you and connecting you to the ADRC so that you can receive some help? So we've rolled that out last month, and we're already seeing that program starting to yield some very encouraging numbers, so that we can connect them with this some of the programs that are out there, assess their homes to try to alleviate some of those issues. And we'll also be piloting a program with an organization called Rebuilding Together that will install grab bars in these folks' homes as well. Providing an appropriate level of response to emergencies that as I mentioned, we conducted that staffing study. It gave some numbers that we're not happy with, quite frankly. That our response distances are long, our travel times are long, our response times are long, and our reliability, and our availability are low. Quite frankly. So we need, when you look at reliability and availability, you're looking at if the call happens in Station 17's area, is Station 17 the one that's going to respond to it? And that many times does not happen. So we create this domino effect. Well, if 15s is out, 16s runs into 15s. And then if 16s is out, then 17s has to run into 16s to backfill. You also get a leapfrogging where now everybody is so misplaced that 19s has to jump all the way to 15s area. So all of that delays our times, and delays the service that we're able to provide to that person in need. Obviously, we're going to be very concerned about that. Part of how we'll address that. You look at our KPI around our response time of 6 minutes or less. We have a goal of 90%. That's an industry standard that is recommended. And I apologize that the latest number for the third quarter is not in there, and I can tell you it's at 82%. So we are, through the first 3 quarters of the year, we are underperforming in that area. So part of what we've looked at and what the staffing study looked at as well and validated was that we're spread pretty thin. That we are spread very thin. And when we look at, we have not added significantly to the organization of adding another company since 1999. We have added a ambulance unit, 2-person ambulance unit in 2003. So as the community has grown, as the service for demand has increased, we've been barely hanging on, and we're to that kind of critical point where we can't make that performance metric anymore. So one solution around that is to discontinue providing the ambulance transfers for the interfacility transfers from one hospital to another. And that will increase our availability and our reliability and put those units back into their area and into their, not only into the city, but into their first response area. So we would expect that would change that number. Go ahead, council member.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So just want to make sure I'm getting real clear on that one. So you're inferring that the ability to meet that KPI target is actually more tied to ambulance than it is to fire apparatus?
That's a portion of it, because what we look at on that response is our total calls for service. So sometimes that what needs to be there first is that ambulance. Sometimes it needs to be a fire truck. But to broadly generalize, they're all fire apparatus, because we are a little different than some systems across the country or in this area that our paramedics on the ambulance are also firefighters. So they are part of that effective response force of the 16 people we need there initially. So if those 2 firefighters are in Milwaukee or at the hospital, then that's 2 firefighters we take away from that total number of 16. Takes us a longer time to get that response force mustered on scene and to make that aggressive fire attack to control it at the lowest level before it does more damage to life and property. So there are,
Mike,
multiple
impacts.
impacts.
How many structure fires do we have a month in the city?
True structure fires?
Yeah, or fires. I mean, how many times do we actually put water on something?
That number is, I don't know it off the top of my head. I can follow up with you, but it's, I think where you're going to is it's not an outstanding number. It's not like, you look out the window, you don't see smoke. We're not burning down houses and buildings left and right. But, it's what you have to weigh out too is not only is there the actual incident, there's the risk. So we're constantly asked to balance risk of what if there is a fire. I mean, 29 days out of the month, is there no fire? And We don't spray any water other than training? Absolutely. But that one day when it's, somebody's house on fire and it's their loved ones or their pets or their belonging in that house, they want that same response time service that they've come to expect.
And to Councilmember Miller's point, it seems like last year and years prior, we would have the numbers of those number of structure fires, number that were contained to structure of origin and that kind of thing. It looks like we're really limited in what we're getting this year with this.
Yeah, and I can.
Those stats still exist. They're just not shown here. We put 3, we limited it to 3, but their KPIs, I mean, they're continuing to collect that data, so they have all that information available.
And I guess to make clear where I'm going, Mike, is if we staff another ambulance service, which I truly believe we're on the borderline of needing another rig and another crew for that, and I think that's 4. Is that accurate? That's 4
For another ambulance?
Yeah.
Actually, that would be 9.
Well, but with your plan, with moving and everything, and
Correct.
So that's 4 people. But
Correct. Yes.
I guess what I'm trying to clear in my mind, and I'm sure I'm not going to be clear after this meeting either, is I believe that transports are important to this community. I just recently sat at the hospital for 5 hours waiting for a transport, and the person that was transported, the ambulance actually came from Wapaka. So that person sat here waiting to go to Milwaukee for 5 hours. And that concerns me that our transport business is still very important to the community. And if we add bodies, I think that'll eliminate some of that. I mean, we pick and choose when we're going to transport. Is that accurate? I mean, the battalion chiefs get to say we're too busy, we're not too busy. Is that accurate?
To some degree, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and to address that issue, we on the cusp of needing a 4th ambulance. We are. And that's absolutely was the recommendation from the staffing study. Was they really provided us with 2 options. Either add a 4th ambulance to the tune of $775,000 for the first year and every year up from that, or discontinue the service. So it's not just do we provide transfers or we don't, it's do we add a 4th ambulance and continue to provide that service, or do we do cost avoidance and not do that?
Right.
Because, so you look at, I know there's concerns about the loss of revenue. I can speak to that too in just a second, but it's a cost avoidance of having to increase our staffing. And I would agree with you, Councilmember Miller, that the transfer of people from one facility to another is an important service, and it is important to the community. But I'm not sure in fact, I am sure we're not the person that should provide that service. That there is other opportunities for private industry, for other providers to step into that space. That our mission is to provide emergency interventions in response to our community. So doing a non-emergency transport service is, a whole different mission. I don't want to spend too much time in the weeds, but I can give you an example from Saturday. That while the battalion chief is on the scene at a fire, active fire going on, concerned about managing that event. We're worried about doing a search and rescue, preserving somebody's property. One of our firefighters becomes injured. He needs to manage that. In the middle of that evolution, the communication center calls him and says, can you call us because we have a transfer that needs to occur out of the hospital? That's a mixed mission to me. That, my priority for this organization is to protect our taxpayers' life, safety, and property. So moving a patient from one facility to another, in many times a non-emergent transfer, that was call 3 of the day from the hospital. The first one was a person that legally we were not able to transfer, that has been clearly explained time and time again. The second one was, can you take this person on Saturday when you have 0 ambulances available in the city to Milwaukee because he needs to have a procedure done Monday? And then the third one was also a non-emergent transfer. It was just an interfacility, get person from point A to point B out of town in the middle of a fire. So I understand the validity and the need for that in the community and the need for that to occur. It's just with our current resources and our model, we're not necessarily the appropriate person to do that. In addition, kind of tied with that, we just bought and placed in 3 new ambulances, thanks to council's approving that in the capital improvement plan last year. And we want to protect that investment. Those are very expensive ambulances, nearly $1 million in ambulances that take a lot of road abuse from being sent a long way. Let's shorten that time that they spend in driving down the highway, less unit hours, so that we can get more life out of those. Sadly, in the community that we're in, the society that we're in, a constant threat for us is an active shooter event. So we were able to, with some grant funding, purchase 11 sets of ballistic protection for our rescuers, to include bulletproof vest and helmet. We're done the training with our folks on just the donning and doffing of it, and working with OPD to develop policies and protocol and train with them of what will that evolution look like should we have to be in that terrible circumstance. And then to make sure that we are providing a more effective management of our scene, keeping our community and our firefighters safe, that the command staff this year is completing the Blue Card Command training, which is 80 hours of online training as well as 3 days of hands-on practical training and testing, so that we can raise our level of ability to manage those incidents.
To manage which incident?
Fires and disasters, to manage emergencies. So it's enhances their ability. It's all about how do you command that scene and utilize your resources. Segueing from there into improving the community's ability to withstand and recover from disruptive events. We can certainly have man-made disasters and emergencies, that acts of terror and things like that. We also stand a high risk for natural disaster as well, whether it be the impending snowfall of winter or flooding or things of that nature. So the fire department staff, as well as key city staff members throughout the whole organization, completed National Incident Management System training. So the first step that we did earlier in the year was to get everybody through those levels of incident management training to make us compliant with what's required by the federal government for us as a government agency. We brought everybody together. We did initial training in the Emergency Operations Center at Station 15, and made sure that everybody got their credentials done. So now our people are credentialed through a thing called WISCAMs, that allows us to track who's in the Emergency Operations Center, or they can go throughout the county, the state, and have that credentialing. Get everybody into what's called alert sense, so that we can call them back. And then just a month or so ago, I believe it was, we exercised the EOC, and we brought in all those key staff people, went through a tabletop exercise that was facilitated by a consultant in Winnebago County Emergency Management to work some of the bugs out, to get us back to practicing and preparing. It had been a long time, been a lot of turnover in the city since the last time we've had to do that, fortunately. So I believe it was in flooding of 2010. So found some shortcomings we need to address. We're addressing some of the infrastructure, logistical type of things as well, based on what we've learned. The city manager and I have met, and we have a plan for how we're going to revise the plan. So we're planning to plan to update the emergency operation plan, so it make sure that we are prepared as a city for those type of events. That we've got additional trainings and exercises for city staff in the fire department, the police department, scheduled into next year as well. So we're going to continue to work hard at that goal. Mayor Palmieri, you had asked about recruiting, and are we recruiting at those events? We really view every opportunity to interact with the public as an opportunity to recruit. that again, this is an area we're spending a lot of space in because we have had trouble finding qualified applicants. But also what's troubling to us is the qualified applicants that we're finding don't come from this community. That when we're asking them in the interview process and, we're doing their backgrounds and things like that, did you grow up in this community? No. Do you live in this community now? No. Did you go to school in Oshkosh? No. Have you been to Oshkosh other than for the interview? No. And that's okay. We want to attract talent regionally and nationwide, but why are our children in this community not saying, I want to grow up to be a firefighter, which I think many of them would say that if asked, but I know how to make that happen, and I think that can happen. That's an attainable goal for me. So we've created several programs. Again, we've put together a consortium or a task force with all the stakeholders in the community. We've partnered with the Boy Scouts of America. They are the parent organization for an exploring post. So I'm happy to say that we have 8 people that have, young adults that had applied to join our initial explorers post. 2 of those, which are young women. So that focuses on the teen years. So we have that program underway. Chief Zemer is spearheading that, doing some fantastic work around that. We've also partnered with Big Brothers Big Sisters to create a hero program where we're focusing on middle school aged girls, many of them at risk. That's what brings them to the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, so that we can open their eyes to that career as well. That, and idealistically, what I like to say, every one of these youngsters that we contact, that they'll grow up to be an Oshkosh firefighter, that'd be great. Will some of them go work in other departments or in other public safety professions? Probably, that'd be great too. But, really what we look at, are we going to make an impact in lives? That are we going to teach life skills, provide mentors, provide career skills that are going to make them successful and potentially break out of cycles of abuse, cycles of poverty, get them to find a living wage that can keep them in this community? Absolutely. And that's what really is our broader mission. You'll see at the next council meeting that or request for approving the agreement to enter into another hiring process with Chippewa Valley Technical College as a companion to what we're doing with Fox Valley now, give us a broader reach throughout the state, tap into a untapped region that we have not hired from as much historically, and also gives us another option for hiring because they provide a list asynchronous with Fox Valley. So, we're making sure that we are hunting and gardening. That are we hunting for people that can fill the jobs now? Absolutely. Are we trying to garden and cultivate a talent pipeline for our youth into the future? We're doing that too.
Chief, how many applications do we get when we post an opening? How many applicants are? Let me. I'm going to ask 2 questions.
Sure.
How many applicants do we get, and then how many qualified applicants do we get?
Yeah, and actually, it's a very timely question because we just finished up our interview process, and we're in the midst of a hiring process right now. So right now there is only one, as of today, there is only one pathway into the Oshkosh Fire Department, and that is through the Fox Valley Technical College hiring process. So in 2019, we had 54 applicants to our fire department, of which I believe it was 46 met the qualifications. So some applied, got screened out before we even saw them. We invited 26 candidates that had successfully, so that was 54 applicants. We got a list of 26 qualified applicants that had passed the testing processes. We invited those 26 to a round of interviews. So they went through 2 rounds of interviews, and we now have a list of 19 qualified applicants from that list. So we are still in the midst. We've made conditional job offers, which you have to do legally to continue moving them through the process of background investigations and medical evaluations and things like that. So that we'll continue them through that process towards throughout the end of the year. So we're getting, and that was a good year for us, really, of the 26. That's, a solid number. That's what it's been teetering around the last few years. But that's why we're looking at how do we broaden our efforts and our abilities, cast a net in other places to bring more applicants, because we want to have a presence not only in the state, but, regionally and nationally of that this is a destination workplace. So we are working to create a lateral entry program as well, so that we can take people that have experience in public safety, maybe the fire service, maybe the military, and bring them into the fire department, as another leg to that hiring process.
A special veterans recruitment.
We, not necessarily recruitment, there is a additional point differential that they get after the interviews. They get veterans points added to them that adds to their score. But is that a market that we're tapping into deeply enough? Absolutely not. And that's the impetus for creating that lateral program of, we have a soldier that's discharged that is a combat paramedic, has years of experience doing that, discharged from the Army or the Marines or whatever branch of service, and now I need a job. That's the type of person that we want to bring into our organization. Has worked in a paramilitary environment, already has training and experience, is used to wearing a uniform. I mean, that's a good fit for our department as a potential employee. So we're trying to tap into that market with that lateral entry program.
Chief, I'm not sure, and this is just a general for council members. The requirements are
So they're
initial.
Yeah, to apply, to be qualified, have to be 18 years of age. You have a minimum of a high school diploma or a GED. And, theoretically, we could hire somebody 18, but, impractical because they also have to have firefighter 1 and 2 certifications. So that would be not impossible, but difficult to get, but also paramedic certification at time of hire. So we're letting people that are in paramedic school, that are enrolled in school or in the testing process, apply once they can prove to us that they've successfully completed that certification. They can provide us with a cert. Then we will put them we can hire them straight away. And they stay kind of in the holding area right now. So of that 19 that I was referencing, 11 are employment ready. The other 8 will be employment ready in 2020. So they're enrolled. Paramedic school doesn't cycle out and graduate until May. So
that's why the partnership with Chippewa Valley and Fox Valley Tech, because they have fire science programs.
Correct.
And paramedic programs.
Correct.
And those are 2-year programs, is that accurate?
The fire, it's about a 3-year process because to get the fire degree and go through all the fire classes about 2 years, and the paramedic adds another third. But as I mentioned, is there ways we can accelerate that? So in this recruitment task force, we have worked with the school district and the technical college to create a dual enrollment program, so that they can take fire program classes, get college credits, work towards certifications, and get high school credit for it at the same time, so that when they graduate high school, they're already that much further ahead. And the benefit of that is it doesn't cost them anything. So that makes it very appealing and encouraging.
Couple points on community involvement and recruiting Oshkosh citizens. Have we ever thought about having like a truck rodeo exhibition, and like maybe have people on hand to talk to younger high school kids about possibly being a firefighter, maybe having like a scholarship program, where if they check all these boxes in 3 years, 4 years from now, you're gonna have a job.
Yeah, that's absolutely, and you're right in line. Your questions are with some of the things that we're working on. So. You talked about scholarship program. We are exploring some other additional scholarshiping opportunities, but our firefighters charitable foundation that the firefighters run, and they raise money for, with the hockey game and a number of other things like that you're familiar with. They provide scholarships in our community for Oshkosh teens that are graduating, want to pursue public safety careers. We've also partnered with Verve Credit Union. We're about to roll out a campaign with them of creating a campaign to encourage people to save for these college classes. So this is what going to EMT school will cost you. This is what going to paramedic school will cost you. As a freshman, you need to save this much money, and that equals this much a month. And that they will match the monies to open the accounts, and so that we can teach them not only how to save for college, but how to budget monies, save monies, and try to push them that direction. So we are definitely looking at that. The truck rodeo, an idea that we participate, as you see by the numbers, very actively in recruitment events. We just did the career cluster showcase at Oshkosh West High School, where we contacted 1,000 middle school or high school aged children in our our school district, from our schools. That we just applied a week or so ago to the United Way for some additional funding around this area for recruitment. One of the things that we want to do is take one of those ambulances that we're retiring, put some, a wrap on it that is a recruiting billboard, so that we can drive it around. And, when we go to those events or, when it's testing time, we put it out in front of the high school, that we do those type of things so that we do increase that visibility and stimulate that conversation.
What about like a community event like the truck rodeo? Because I work at Oshkosh Corp and we do it every 2-3 years. We get a lot of community involvement. A lot of people show up to see what these trucks can do. And
yeah, we would love to be involved with that. I know we do touch the truck.
Yeah.
But I don't know that we're involved with that. So that would definitely be something that would be
some
very,
real
very appealing to
operational
us.
stuff, like shooting the hoses off, hitting targets.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would. That's the kind of thing that we really want to be involved in. And what I have shared with all these different task force members of the school districts and the tech schools and the Chamber of Commerce and the litany of people that are involved with us, of you give us an opportunity to speak to people about the fire department, to potentially recruit people, we'll have someone there. So we have made good with that commitment.
Question going back to the inter-facility transfer discontinuation, is there a rough idea of how much that currently costs? I know it might be difficult to quantify because it's also the opportunity and availability that impacts, but do we have a sense of what savings there might be to go towards some of the enhancement by discontinuing?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's really a cost avoidance issue, because to put in that fourth ambulance would be right around $775,000. And that's with repurposing, one of the other ambulances we have, not buying a new one, but that would increase the need to buy that new ambulance in the more near future. So that would be about $775,000. That we would have to out of pocket. Right now we make roughly $180,000, but we can round up to $2 because we're all friends. $200,000 in revenue from those interfacility transfers. So you would have a net gain of $500,000 in cost avoidance by not going into that fourth ambulance. So you're going to lose money to save money, or spend money to save money. Is really the choice.
Essentially, if we were to give up the transfers, we'd be losing that 180, let's just call it $200,000 a year. So that would be a drop in revenue, and that would have to get made up by tax dollars, because that's revenue that we wouldn't have.
And
So but the alternative, there's two alternatives, and as Chief said earlier, add the unit, add a fourth unit at $775,000, or get out of the transfer business, and a net cost of $200,000. But the net cost really is a loss of revenue.
So what's the third option, financial, of do nothing, continue as we are?
Well, that goes to the whole risk issues that the chief brought up earlier.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. And that's all, it's all risk. Everything that fire does is risk management.
And let me be very clear. I think we've got the best fire department in the entire world, except for the Van Dyne Fire Department. But I understand our firefighters don't want to do this. I've gotten that message loud and clear. A couple of concerns of mine, and not just the fire service, but almost half of our employees no longer live in the city of Oshkosh. And I think that's concerning, because this is a service that we're providing to the citizens of Oshkosh, and half of our employees don't live in the city. So I think we're starting to get, as an entire, all 610 employees, is that?
Give or take, yeah.
Give or take, 610, 300 of those citizens, or 300 of our employees do not live in the city. And that's very alarming to me, because as time goes on, we're losing people that are receiving a paycheck, providing services to the city, to the citizens of the city that don't live here and aren't using those facilities. And I think they lose touch with the value of those services that we provide. So that is alarming to me, not just on the fire service. I'm talking about the fire, the police, everybody else. Half of our employees don't live here, and that's very alarming to me. But giving up a service to the citizens of the community, it's a tough pill for me to swallow. And especially when our battalion chiefs get to make the decision of whether we transport or not. And if you want to tighten it down, I agree with you. The examples you gave me for Saturday while you're out with a fire, that's ridiculous. They shouldn't be calling us to deliver somebody on a Saturday that needs a procedure on Monday. Call a cab. You know, I mean, it's I meant the cabulance, but you know what I mean. But I just have a real problem taking that service away from the citizens.
Sure, and I understand your concerns, and you know I'm struggling to connect those two directly. Of the fact that we have a diminishing amount of employees that live in the city, you know, and that's a concern I share. You know, and I think we addressed that earlier, and you know we will continue to work towards that around our recruitment efforts. You know, so. But to say because you don't live in the city, you shouldn't get to vote on what's or to have input on what's best for the community, you know, I struggle with that, quite honestly. So, you know, you say we're taking this service away from the community member. Probably, maybe it's a community member. It's one of our Oshkosh citizens. But that's also a service we would be providing for the person that comes in for any of our myriad of events, has a cardiac event, and now that they live in Minnesota, North Dakota, Florida, France, wherever they came from. And now we are transferring them from one hospital to another outside of our city. We're not providing that service to a community member. You know, that you referenced the Van Dyne Fire Department. So if somebody has a medical event in Van Dyne, ends up at one of these hospitals in Oshkosh and needs to be transported out, we're taking an ambulance away from the person that may need us because their loved one is having a heart attack on the floor, and using them to transfer that person that potentially doesn't live in our city either. So, I mean, there's broad reaching implications. And like I said, you know, you referenced the firefighters don't want to do it. You know, it's not, I don't want to have them painted with a brush of they don't want to because it's unpalatable and beneath them.
Absolutely not. I think the firefighters have some legitimate reasons why they don't want to do it. I mean, I understand that. And I truly believe some of those reasons. How long have we been in the transport business?
Since 2003.
Okay.
You know, and we were a very different organization in a very different city, and the hospitals were very different in 2003. You know, we have seen a tremendous amount of growth and demand on the hospital services, you know, some of their capabilities, but also their need to transfer people out. You know, so we are seeing a steady rise in that demand for service. Go ahead, Mayor.
And that point right there, their need to transfer people out, I think is a critical element of this, is that in part this is a business function of the hospital also, while obviously it has human impact. But that is happening even in some of the other services that we provide related to fall assistance, right? Where private, nonprofit entities are making decisions using those public resources in a cost-saving measure for their operation. And I that's why I was curious about the, you know, the cost piece of it, or the savings, if you will.
I think the other, or were you going to say
You go
something?
right ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think, you know, over the years too, we've seen a number of the calls go up substantially every year. So, and I didn't take it that you meant it that way, Mr. Miller, but, you know, I can agree. I don't think it's a matter of what, you know, our firefighters want to do or don't want to do. I think it's just more the responsibilities keep increasing and growing, as well as the dynamics of our community. And we have not staffed at the rate of which our calls are growing and which the needs are growing. And so, to Ms. Palmieri's point, even at an individual residential level, how many calls come in dealing with falls of elderly that live on their own? Sometimes it's, you know, could be even tagged as lonely calls, and all of that all requires our equipment to go out. So I think there's a couple of things that are leading to the dynamics of, you know, the transportation issue, but I don't think in my time I've ever heard necessarily any particular firefighter say there isn't an element to their job that they don't want to do. They just may not have enough manpower to cover all of the needs.
Well, I think that ties back into me, they don't want to do it because they're short-staffed. So, I mean, that's, and again, I want to reiterate, I think we've got the second-best fire department in the entire world, second only to the Van Dyne Fire Department.
I would confer with you, but we have some question about Van Dyne's screening process of their members. And let me clarify, I did not take that offense that you were implying that the firefighters don't want to do work. It's, that they want to do meaningful work.
Right.
And the transfers are not, it's not that they're not meaningful, and I probably shouldn't have said that, but we've got 1,500 to 1,700 responses a year of people that are falling down in this community. We have a lot of community health needs that are in our community that nobody's stepping up to fill that gap. And that's the space they want to be in, and as a department we want to be in, of how are we making an impact in the community. And by getting outside our model to providing a long distance transfer or interfacility transfer, that's not the best use, in everybody's opinion, of that resource. Councilmember Peschel?
To me, this is an issue that comes down to service as it relates to mission. So, in my understanding, just looking at the mission, it talks about responsiveness to the Oshkosh community. And that's not to say that we can't be responsive to those people that need those extra assistance, but I think it's making sure that our staff are here within our boundaries or within our boundary agreements to provide that service. And I think, in response, this is mere pennies. We're getting mere pennies related to what the long-term investment might be to maintain this. So we end up writing off, in cycles, the majority of these ambulance rides every 2 to 3 years, right? Correct, every 3 years?
Every 3 years.
We write off the
Oh, yeah.
So
cyclically we do.
So we're, so we commit to that work. The person who the ride has to be provided for can't afford to pay that back. They only get a certain portion back from Medicare. It's not that we don't want to provide those rides. It's just that maybe it doesn't fit within what our mission is within the
So
city.
does it fit more closely with paratransit or ambulance or some of our other transportation?
It's many times
Because
it's medical
transport.
support. I mean, in all reality, the better conversation to have to address that is to start having this conversation from a collaborative governmental perspective, involving those ambulance companies that exist in our community to solve it that way. Because majority of these are all medical rides, and if you go to the ADRC, they indicate that they provide medical rides, but they have to be, which is kind of the reason why you're also gearing people towards the ADRC, is because that's the avenue to get them in touch with how they get the support to get those medical rides. Now, some of these are spur of the moment things that need to be taken care of, and some of these are long-term things that sometimes people don't plan the best for, which, working with the ADRC to kind of capture that and create a solution to that, I think is a much better way than just saying that the Oshkosh Fire Department has to eat that cost and then write off that cost.
And I'm sure you didn't expect to have a debate today, and I apologize, but we've got everybody here. How do we score these transports? I mean, there must be a scoring system for transport, urgent, like needs to go now. I mean, is there any type of nothing?
No, and I don't want to dive too deep into this for several reasons. One, I know that you're interested in staying ahead of schedule and getting to lunch, and also, I don't want to dive too deep into this discussion. There might be something better that you and I could have offline, but
Sure.
That is part of the problem, is the lack of structure.
Okay.
And that's one of the questions that was posed to me was, what does council need to do around this issue? Do we have a contract we'd have to break? No. Is there an ordinance that we would have to repeal? No. The only thing you have to do around this issue is to not do anything.
Okay.
Unless we receive specific direction from council of we are mandating that you do this, which I hope does not occur, then it's an easier break. Once we go down that pathway of let's create a system and scoring and, what's revenue look like, and that's a different business that we would have to approach. Right now, like I said, we can make a cleaner exit, and I want to be clear that we have no intention of just after this meeting going out in the hallway and calling the hospitals and saying, don't call here and no more. That we have meetings scheduled with them to talk about what does transition look like, what do your needs look like, of how do we not leave you in the lurch.
And so there's really no way to carve this up and say, listen, we're not gonna take your ride. The only time I want you to call me if it's a life and death situation. You think they'll continue to abuse the system if we leave it that way?
I do.
Okay, all right.
The problem I see is, if it's a judgment call on your guys is if we can take this call or not, you guys can't tell the future. 3 hours from now, you might have needed those people, and they're not there for a life-threatening instead of just a non-emergency. And you're putting your whole system at risk over something that doesn't probably need to be done. It's not that you guys don't want to do it. It's just the beef is you want to keep your quality of staff and abilities at top notch.
Correct.
It to a different point, I'll use the law enforcement side of it. I remember back when I was at the sheriff's office, we saw Hubers all over the place. And we were just like a cab company. And I think there's a little rationale of that too. I mean, obviously, if you need to go to freight or in an emergency, your guys are going to go. That's the name of the game. But if it's a non-emergency type transport, I think the private sector can easily cover that. With Gold Cross Ambulance, if it's out in the rural area, Ripon Ambulance can maybe take it. North Fond du Lac maybe can take it if it's Van Dyne and some of those things. But I think, as the chief said, you got to work out a strategy with the two hospitals and even Theta Care, because a lot of our patients go up to Theta Care Hospital. So it's a balancing act. But I think the key thing is and that's why I went back to the education side. Our firefighters are probably some of the best trained fire service people we have, and it is the good use of manpower to have them take a non-emergency transport with a $300,000 ambulance down to Milwaukee General Hospital when, as Councilmember Krause said, we could have a fire emergency there 2 hours out of the city.
I understand that, but my only concern with all of this, and I agree with 90% of what the chief and 90% of my friends in the fire department are saying. My concern is we're leaving our most vulnerable citizens at risk by taking the service away. Because if we leave this in the hands 100% up to the private parties, they're going to want a credit card or a payment up front or something to do this transport. And that's my concern. So,
But there's no reason, after, let's just say we leave it up to the fire department, Chief Stanley and his administrative staff to make that decision, and it doesn't work. Who's to say we can't go back?
that is what I'm hanging my hat on.
That the hospitals come back and say, it's not working. It's not working. So we need you to come back and help us in some capacity. We've done that. We've done that in other areas.
The reality is that it works for one hospital, but it doesn't work for the other hospital. I mean, in all reality, Mercy they own an ambulance company. They do all those rides. Aurora relies on us to do that. So the reality is that there is a private organization that does do that for one hospital.
So I guess my question would be, I'm really kind of conflicted here, and
As am I, yeah.
Full disclosure, I had that exact same situation with a family member recently with multiple fractures. Went to the ER. They determined, because we're short in the region, a pediatric orthopedic surgeon, that we can't do anything for her here. She needs to go to Children's. Guess who transported and took that whole ride down there?
Oshkosh.
I was feeling like, oh my gosh, we're shorting the city by being in this transport. But my question would be, if that weren't the case, if we weren't offering that, wouldn't the hospital just call like a Gold Cross or something like that, and we would see it in a billing invoice somewhere down the line of, depending on insurance coverage?
But you might wait 4 to 5 hours for that to happen.
Oh.
So,
If it's not an emergency and they just sit there, it's not an emergency.
you know, to put a fine point on this, you know, then I think in the interest of time, we should probably move on. But to really distill it down, our mission is to take the sick and injured to the hospital to get definitive care. And we do that, and we do that extremely well. We do it very often. They are at a hospital where they're receiving definitive care. Now, that facility may not have all of the resources necessary to continue care for that patient, and they want to transfer them to another facility. And many times, more often than not, that is in their network.
Of course, we know they want to keep the money.
Yeah,
Chief,
so-
I understand that concept more than anybody. I mean, absolutely. I guarantee you 99% of the time, if Aurora's calling you, they're getting shipped to another Aurora facility. So they're not going to give up the payday. I mean, that absolutely.
They're not incurring the risk of that. I don't want to squash
Okay.
council discussion, but I anticipated this, so their budget, their operating budget is relatively static. This is a major issue, as well as the enhancements to implement the study that council had asked. Well, so really, you're on the track of where you should be talking, but this obviously isn't going to get resolved today.
No.
And I think, and I heard
Probably should talk about the enhancement.
we absolutely.
I would
yeah,
love
and
to.
There's still time. Yeah, it's like, rescue me, Rick. But I know Deb had her hand
No,
raised.
the only thing I was gonna say is I think no matter what we talk about regarding the budget, whether it's capital improvements or the operational, what is the true function? Our function is to respond, not to fix. And I think to what Chief Stanley is saying, that's our responsibility, is to serve the immediate need and to respond, and as quickly and as efficiently as possible. But once they go to another institution, which that's their primary focus, that's their responsibility.
And I heard the chief say something, and this evolved. We got to this point because of an evolution that is like, sure, we're happy to help out. It's sort of like you borrow a cup of sugar from your neighbor and then you're taking their car. I mean, and there was a long time between the cup of sugar and taking the car and keeping it.
Hey, for me, it's a cup of gin, but
Yeah,
thanks.
but you understand, it starts with a very small thing and then evolves. And Chief mentioned something about should there be more structure? Well, there needs to be structure, period. There is absolutely no structure. And the first thing out of the gate, which I think started this discussion, was, well, you're gonna do this and you're gonna do that. What Aurora was essentially saying is, you need to spend more money on more training and more this and more that to meet our needs. And it's like, time out, we gotta have a discussion. So, if anything, we gotta have that discussion about what structure should there be? What can happen? The mayor said, well, there is a third option. Yeah, status quo, but these guys are concerned that status quo is not satisfactory. Option one, go into a fourth ambulance is very expensive. Go into the other option to get out of the transfer business is a big decision. Yeah, it's reversible, but it's gonna have some costs. It's gonna have a cost.
But let me ask you one last question, and I know this is like being trapped in a basement fire without a hose, Mike, sorry. But, what if we gave you the ambulance and we continue to do transports for another year? I mean, is it in your mind, you just want to wash your hands of the transport?
I would have a lot of concerns about that because, are you saying we would give it to you of council, or it'd be funded by the hospital?
Well, the council, just say if the council gives you the fourth ambulance.
Or the hospital gives a pilot.
Yeah, the concern I would have about us being subsidized is
I don't want to walk down that path either.
Thank you.
So yes, that's not the way we want to operate.
Yeah, that's one. I would like to note that it was on record that you said you 90% agree with me, and I'll use that liberally in the future. That's, I don't want to, part of my hesitation and reluctance to have this discussion is, I don't want to publicly appear that I am besmirching the Aurora system.
Absolutely not.
And I don't begrudge them for having the need. But I feel very strongly, and the Matrix Consulting Group very strongly, that we are not the right person to meet that need. You know, that there are a lot of needs in the community. You know, need clean water. Well, we've got hoses, but we're not the right person to meet that need. You know, so we can talk further about what would options look like, but it's again what's in our mission.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that, I would suggest that we go, if there's any questions about the base budget, I know Mike had a long presentation, but, you know, are there any highlights you want to talk about the base budget? Because quite honestly, it is very static. I think the discussion about the matrix study recommendations that are in several enhancement packages are probably as valuable, if not more valuable, than the operating budget itself.
Sure.
I don't know if,
Yeah, the only thing I would really have to say about the base budget is that we're projected to be under budget this year. You know, that not significantly, but we don't intend to exceed budget, which is always a goal of ours. That, as City Manager Roloff indicated, the 2020 operation budget is very static, except for the enhancement package. You know, so I'd like to spend more time in the enhancement package. That you'll note in your budget book that the things we're asking for this year or in the coming year in 2020 are the 4 FTE for firefighter positions, the full-time management analyst, and an enhancement for an additional $24,000 into the operating budget to address some of those facility concerns that we spoke about yesterday. You know, so on the next page, I've crosswalked those our objectives or those things we're asking for in the enhancement package back to the staffing study. So relocating that apparatus that I touched on earlier, moving that aerial apparatus or the Quint to Station 15, that would take the place of the existing heavy rescue. The heavy rescue currently is staffed with 2 people. The NFPA standard for a piece of equipment like that, the recommendation is 5 to 6. You know, that's a lofty goal, and and is probably not a good fit for our department, and the call volume that we have. But, our staffing model on all of our other fire apparatus is 3. So having a 2-person apparatus, jeopardizes the safety of our responders, of our firefighters, and also jeopardizes the safety of the public in the fact that, I touched on that effective response force earlier. If we need to get those 16 people there to where the incident is going to occur, well, very predictably, that incident is going to occur where we have the highest population density, we have the highest risk around buildings. So that precipitated the recommendation that we would move the Quint to Station 15 to replace the heavy rescue and have it take on its duties. And then we need to have that as a 3-person, continuously staffed at 3 apparatus. So to have that extra third person on there every day, we have 3 shifts, requires 3. Then with the staffing coefficient that we currently have to cover vacation, sick leave, military leave, jury leave, all the different types of leave time, that would require us to hire another FTE. We have to round up to 4 because I haven't been able to hire a .83 firefighter yet. So
That'd be tough.
Yeah, that's so we're asking for those additional 4 firefighters. And like I said, that, as you can see, is directly tied to that recommendation of the staffing study. That, as I referenced earlier, council had the forethought and the vision to commission the study, of what do we need staffing-wise, to make our department as efficient and effective as possible. So clearly one of their recommendations was that additional 4 FTE. Another recommendation that came from them was that we need some management, civilian support staff, and that would take form in a management analyst. We talked about, well, where are some of your data and your KPIs, and right now data is many times an afterthought because it's an additional duty as assigned to the staff you see sitting here with me of, oh no, that's due, we got to try to crunch these numbers. And we commissioned the staffing study that has a tremendous amount of data. Having that management analyst, that person is going to be able to provide us with information like this on a daily basis, so we can really identify what our needs are. Go ahead, Mayor.
And I believe it's been a year or so ago when we were having a discussion about being able to even consider as a community joining some of the lawsuits on the opioid settlement. And we didn't even have the capability of capturing the kind of data that would tell that story to make a case. And I believe Councilmember Allison Asby brought up, this week, there were 2 communities in Ohio that did receive that. So, I mean, that's just one example of where we are data deficient, right? And so sometimes these analyst positions can be expensive, but they can also help with other grant funding opportunities by producing those numbers in the administration, correct?
Yeah, I mean, as you all clearly know, data drives decisions, and data is really driving the emergency service arena as well now. And I watched James Robbie's presentation yesterday to you, where he talked about the many benefits that they've been able to realize from having the management analyst, and talking with Chief Smith from the police department, realizing that the many benefits that they have from having that management analyst, that, it's an area we're deficient. And that's, you look at your 3 biggest departments in the city, Public Works, Police, and Fire, 2 out of those 3 have a management analyst. So I think there's some definite case for that for us. Additionally, you look at our civilian support staff, our non-operational people, the fire department has 2. A 3/4 time administrative assistant, and our public educator, firefighter John, who is a fantastic employee, but his job should be out in the field interacting. So we have no support staff to do some of these functions. So like I said, it becomes how do we keep that plate spinning? And this is such a crucial and vital position for us to find those data points that we need, and to look for funding, and to do all those things, and we just have no bandwidth to do that. Go ahead, Mayor.
Just one question. When we were talking about transferring the building maintenance from BCs, for example, to like a maintenance custodian person, if we didn't do the management analyst now, does that transfer of some of those building maintenance issues by BCs allow them to somehow do some more of those kinds of
a small part, of that, every minute we can free up, we can fill up. But it's also what I talked about yesterday of, right resourcing and right laning. So, we can take one of my very qualified staff that are excellent at developing personnel and putting out fires and training and doing things like that, and say, all right, now I need you to be a management analyst, at this pay rate, or I can hire somebody at a much more cost-effective pay rate that's what their specialty, expertise, and desire is.
One of the reasons that I liked Matrix approach was that they didn't default to the answer is more sworn firefighters, officers. It was both. That's why led us to them getting hired.
Civilian-oriented.
They looked at how can you civilianize a certain aspect of the workforce, and the police have done a good job even up to this point. And I think it's Minu was the person selected by me. She was the management analyst in the PD as the employee of the year, and Minu deserved it, and I absolutely believe that. But it was also enlightening to the police department of what a position like that could do. It was just magic for them to have a civilian that could get in and do police work, because there's with the paramilitary group, for them to want to go civilianizing is a little bit of an awkward move for them. But the police had already been doing it for a number of years. Adding that management analyst gave them a lot of value added. The main value added was it freed up their sworn officers and their sworn managers to do more things that managers should be doing, managing their people, managing the issues, the challenges that the department faces. With only 2 personnel, it's firefighter John and Carol, and we all know these people. That's their entire civilian contingent. So the answer is if we don't hire the management analyst, the BCs will continue to do what they can do within not just their capabilities, because I think they have the capabilities. Do they have the time? Because when there's a fire, when there's an ambulance call, when there's a call, the BCs are the supervisor on duty. So they have to, and they're literally 8, 9 o'clock at night. If there's not a call, they're at their computer still plugging away at stuff. So that's what it's going to free up. It's going to make it more 8 to 5 stuff, because finance doesn't call them at 9 o'clock at night with a question. Finance called them at 2 in the afternoon with a question and said, "Can you have it for me, tomorrow?" A management analyst would say, "Chief, I got to work on this for finance," type of thing. So the civilianizing is there. Even the preventive maintenance items that are there that are only 24,000, it was. The BCs were, at least, if they weren't doing it themselves, they were getting some crews to do it. But I think we talked about it yesterday. It's easier to drop a mop. If they're mopping the floor, that's one thing. They can drop a mop and go do a call. But if they're in the middle of preventive maintenance and taking something out of a HVAC system and all of a sudden it goes and it's 90 degrees that day and they leave the station without cool, when they get back, it's not going to be very comfortable. And then they're back to square one. So the PM stuff is very important to free them up. All of these are intended, with the exception of the firefighters, which are direct service. Everything else is to free up staff and not utilize sworn personnel to achieve those things. So
And I've never seen one of those chiefs type worth a darn, so.
And City Manager Roloff touched on it a little bit about, now at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, they're working on those things. Many times that's generous, that they're working on these things at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning after they've tried to get through all the rest of their duty day. That's the staff positions coming in and on weekends, and we're trying to attend to this. So, we are really at our breaking point administratively and managerially of the numbers of people that we have in these positions can't do it all. So when we're trying to support an organization of this size, we need some skilled help in some of these areas. As we talk about the enhancements, I'm not jealous of you in the least little bit. You have some very difficult decisions to come to about how you're going to spread the budget around. And I know the fire department is asking for a significant number of things to occur and that are tied to a significant amount of money. But what I would ask you to consider is, these are priorities in 2020. These are the things that we need to be able to keep our nose and maybe our mouth a little bit above water. That these came from that commission staffing study of what do you really need? And one of the things that they were very cognizant of, and we talked to them a lot about, is what's realistic. We could solve a lot of problems if we hired 25 people. But, how can we absorb that as a city and as a taxpayer base? So what can we drill down to this is what the bare bolts are for 2020?
And I think in the past, we've also had those parts that we've seen where Oshkosh is on the lowest end per capita spending for public safety and certain things. And, there has been growth. And so, how sustainable is that without us falling far, far behind?
Yeah, and just some perspective, you look to our neighbors to the north in Appleton that have a very similar sized organization to ours, a similar sized community. They run just a little bit more than 50% of the calls we do a year. You look at the numbers in our operation budget that City Manager Roloff talked about are pretty bare bones. We've had a tight belt for a long time, and that's okay because we're a team. And I've talked to it before of the needs in the city have been many over the years and will continue to be. And how do we triage and prioritize? And we've done a tremendous amount of work in this city around water and storm drain and streets and the police department. We've prioritized those issues. I listened to Director Collins' discussion today about the buses, and we had to replace them, and now we're kind of caught up. So we constantly have to, as a city, obviously rotate where that focus is to do some catch-up work. And I think you were all very aware of that. That's what necessitated the staffing study and the impending station space study. So now we have some recommendations that hopefully we'll be able to act on.
So on your list of needs, you guys are the experts. What's your priority 1, 2, 3?
You know, I really have struggled with that question because, you know,
I knew it was coming.
right? Yeah, I knew it was coming.
He's gonna be mad with whatever answer you
We wanna
give.
give
Yeah.
you what you need, if we're gonna choose you guys as a need.
Yeah, that, you know, I did not put anything forward in the enhancement package that I think is superfluous or that is not dire in need. You know, that's, you know, and I struggle with, you know, is what's 1, 2, 3? That's one. You know, I know that's a big bite, you know, of one. You know, and I if I have to, you know, under duress, you know, knew it was coming, you know, having emergency response personnel that can serve our public, you know, and keep them safer, you know, that's mission critical. That's always a top priority. You know, and that's 2-person staffed unit, you know, has been a shortcoming for us for a while that we need to address. But, you know, hot on its heels, you know, is that management analyst position. And, you know, I'm not foolish enough in my position to ever say to the community or to my staff, to my firefighters, that I'm going to prioritize something above firefighters. You know, that you wouldn't see me here next year probably because they would run me out on a rail. But to be fair to my command staff that is here today and that is struggling, you know, in the trenches, that management analyst is right there just as important. You know, because we need to be able to run the business. Go ahead, Councilmember Miller.
One last question, and I already know the answer to this, but I mean for the people at home, the 4 people that the 4 new firefighters that you're asking for would also be paramedics.
Correct.
So I mean, I just want to make that clear to everybody at home that we're not just hiring firefighters, we're hiring paramedics. So
Correct.
And we have for decades.
Yeah, that is a hiring requirement.
Just off of that, Chief, because we have a lot of enhancements and we can't do them all, obviously. If we, let's just say, approved the management analyst, we agree or leave it up to you to discontinue the interfacility medical transfers, agreed to 2 firefighters this year, knowing that we're going to add 2 more next year, and then do the 24,000 enhancement, where would that work?
I wouldn't turn it down. Let me put it that way. But really, to make that move of moving the quint, you know, to have the adequate staffing, we have to have the 4 firefighters because we have such a narrow margin of employees and staffing coefficient. We can't absorb that.
Okay.
I would throw out one.
A half-year deal.
Well, yeah, if you're gonna do 2 and then 2, you'd be just as well as authorize them to do
After.
the 4 as of 7/1.
Right.
The same cost for 2020, and if you were committed to doing 2 and 2 in 21, it's
Right.
the same, it's the same
And we
price.
get to staff that thing six months earlier, so.
Yeah, so that would be one way to do it.
Yeah, and tied to that, why that would work well is that will give us the time to take receipt. It takes several months, oddly, to build the fire engine up the road. You know, that for us to take delivery of that, you know, would be mid-year. So that would work well in that regard.
And I don't want to put any of your officers on spot, but are you anticipating any retirements by the first of the year?
Yeah, we are 2 firefighters
The white hair guy in the back.
Yeah.
Well, the fireman of the year, yeah. They're all getting white back there. I don't know about that.
Yeah, which one?
But, I mean, have you had
Yes, we are.
firefighters approach you, say that we're probably going to go the end of the year, first of the year? or whatever?
Regardless of whether these 4 FTE, we're anticipating hiring 6 in 20.
Okay.
Russ knows.
'Cause I
Yeah,
know you
we've
had-
already talked about that because it's all set up. When we do our payroll costs, like we talked about earlier, for all departments, we kind of talk to the departments on, you know, who has the potential for leaving employment and then bringing them, you know, replacing those people, and then looking at the associated costs. So that's all been factored into each of the operating budgets.
If you recall yesterday when there was that question about why is that one line item going up, adjustment to salaries, and that's where we put a lot of these payouts, and there's a lot of payouts going on next year.
Well, I think with the firefighters, you can, or any city employee, you can see the overtime rack up, and that lets you know that they're in their final 3 years of.
There's always that little.
There's longevity in there. Hey, when I went out, it was longevity, so you can go both ways.
So do we have more budgets to cover with you?
Just a couple more brief things. I don't know if
No, you go right ahead.
anything else on enhancements.
We'll go at the end.
That some questions have been asked about what would that management analyst do. I attached the sample position description draft to your packet. We have two other budgets that we've had for a long time: the fire safety budget and the EMS fire grant budget. Those are both budgets that were created because of monies we received from the state for support. So we will continue to use those to supplement our department capabilities where appropriate. And then the only other budget that I have is the 2020 capital improvement plan budget. In 2020, we have the replacement fire engine. That's the one I was just speaking of, that we'll have that built to complete that move of the engines and quints. The first phase of a training center would be the second phase, because we're doing the architectural and engineering study right now, is in this year's capital improvement plan. The next phase of that will be providing a fire department drill tower. The following page is a picture of what that would look like. That will at least give us a drill tower that will meet the ISO requirements. This was also a recommendation from the staffing study about having a drill tower that meets those requirements, but this would allow us to have some place to train, to do our recruit training, to do our incumbent training, and we would place that at the old armory on Sawyer Street. And I'll talk more about additional phases here shortly. We've already touched on the space need assessment that the council had requested. Well, that will occur in 2020, and then we'll replace one of our utility vehicles from 1995 with a 1-ton pickup truck in the CIP. I would like to bring your attention to the 2021 CIP of an area that is unfunded. I heard City Manager Roloff speak to you a little bit this morning about, is it $12 million? Is it $15 million? Where do we put our borrowing at so that we can address some of these issues? I think that's one of the ones that you would have to consider, because that is as of now, an unfunded project in 2021. That's we
What
have.
page is that?
45.
It's in the 2021 section. It's,
Unfunded.
hang on,
36.
2021-36. And just as a general thing, the unfunded projects in 2021 totals $12.7 million. So there's a lot of pent-up projects that are there, and it's not intended to scare you. It's just intended to just open your eyes that there are a lot of things out there, and
It does both.
yeah, it does well. Well, thank you. But the fire training center is obviously one of them.
And we can rearrange these as we need as we go. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That's
Right.
in too many years, particularly the fire training center, and with Chief Franz and I, it would be, let's put it in year 5. And I did it in 2010, and I did it in every year until 2019. So and that wasn't genuine, because that was saying, no, never. And
Right.
it wasn't the intent to say no, never, but that was the message, I think, that was out there, was no, never. And so when Chief Stanley came in, he said, look, it doesn't look like we're serious about this. How can we make this serious? And there was obviously a bunch of different departments were like that.
And Chief, for the people at home, explain why it's difficult to use the tech for all of our training.
Yeah, that's the tech center there in Appleton has a fantastic training facility. But the problem that we have with utilizing that to a greater extent with our personnel is to send somebody to that training. We have two choices. That would be take resources out of the city, take the companies out of the city, send them to Appleton to the tech school, 30 minutes away. So we've talked about our struggles to cover our response area as it is. So if we diminish our resources, puts us further behind. So then the next logical suggestion would be then send them on their day off, and schedule them up there. Well, then when we do that, we incur overtime, and that would be very cost ineffective as well, because we're going to be paying a time and a half rate to have our people trained. So what's the best solution is to have that training center centrally located within the city confines. And that's part of how we got to the property at the old Armory on Sawyer Street, of centrally located within the city, still allows our crews to be available for response within the city. So not having that has held back our training and our ability to train, for a number of years. So, we're to that point of city of our size, needs to move forward with a training center, for a department of our size, especially the number of people we're training, with as we look at retirements and attrition and growth of the employee numbers. So how do we do that the most cost effectively? And the way we've done that is a couple different ways in identifying and repurposing a building and a footprint that was designed to be a training center. So rather than start from scratch, develop a property, that's very costly. Additionally, instead of having a 4-story burn building, to meet that ISO requirement, you don't need the 4-story burn building. So that, when we priced that out, the same exact model that's in the new Fond du Lac Training Center was $700 and some thousand, where we found a solution to that particular piece of the training center for $85,000.
I have an obligation to point out a hidden cost associated with the training center. Chief knows this because I keep reminding him, that ain't all, Mike. We're talking about using this place on Sawyer, which I believe is absolutely made to be reconstituted into a fire training center. It was a training facility for the National Guard. So training facility makes perfect sense. But currently, the fire department has many roommates over there. The police department has the C-Cov over there, along with some other vehicles. The general services facilities has basically that's clerks, but thank you. The clerk's office not only stores their voting equipment there, but they test their voting equipment there. So that requires electricity and heat and things like that. Currently, that's the only one that really needs full heat. Cold storage or warm storage for both general services, which is basically extra furniture, things like that. The museum has overflow storage there. That needs to be not warm, but it can't be just
Garage, unheated garage.
Heated garage type of thing,
Yeah.
thank you, yeah. So there's multiple tenants that are there that would be displaced, that we just can't simply say, oh, it's $2.5 million for fire training. And we've been working with FGM that was working with fire on this. Also, what can we do with police? And then, what are you looking for with voting machines and things like that? We don't necessarily have to build a new building for them. They're doing fine where they are over there right now, so it's pretty modest. But I just don't want to leave that out, it's only $2.5 million. Whatever it'll take to accommodate police, general services, museum, and clerk, we have to think about them as well.
I would be curious, depending on the facility, and not a discussion for today, but perhaps down the road, is I have to think that not every single community has a fire training center. Is there a way that we can generate revenue by having one here?
That is something that we discussed in the CIP book itself. We do think that there will be some opportunity not only for the fire training portion, but the classroom portions and some of that other space as well. So maybe somebody wants to rent it just for the classroom because they're having a class on vending machine awareness or whatever it might be, that they don't need the fire training props. But we do think there could be some potential revenue streams associated with that.
Well, I would think our border townships, instead of having to go up to Appleton, also may take advantage of, like Town of Algoma, Town of Black Wolf.
Not only that, but
Oshkosh.
like North Fond du Lac,
Right.
like those communities do not have to either go
They'll
south.
probably go south, though, with Fond du Lac.
But from knowing some.
But the discussion needs to be had to it.
And I just want to remind all the council members, if we do give up the transport, we're giving up $200,000 too, that's gonna get sucked out of this budget too. So, I mean,
Yeah, and-
it's real dollars.
Yeah, and I touched on, there's some other things to consider around that. One thing to weigh in too is that in 2020 is when we will start to realize the increase in per capita for the ambulance billing in the county. So we went from $1.43 per capita to $2.70. So we're going to see a significant increase in that money as well. In not a discussion for today, but we're looking at some different things based around fees, for some of our super user facilities and things like that we're going to want to have with council that also may offset that.
So if we were to walk away from that, from the ambulance, would we also have some savings in overtime?
Potentially, it would be hard to quantify that, but, would I go out on a limb and say yes, because you're going to decrease the workload, that unit hour utilization on the ambulance that is so high. So does that reduce the use of sick leave? Does that reduce the use of intermittent leave time? Does it reduce the sleep deprivation that contributes to injuries that cause lost work time? Absolutely. And that's one of the issues.
$200,000, Bob.
Yeah.
It's not even that, but every guy that goes on that gets in that amble, they negotiated part of their contract to be compensated extra for that, and that's something that they feel so much about that they're willing to walk away from that extra income as well. And we got our own employees telling us that this is taking away from our mission.
But we also have citizens that need the service. So, I mean, we've got to balance that, so.
You got
We
4
get
minutes
them- we
left.
get
I'm
them-
just
All right.
saying.
We get them,
Not
get
going
them to
back
where they
there.
need to be.
And I think Mr. Mugrauer has been very, very patient
Oh,
multiple times
there
in
you
this
go.
conversation,
Boogs,
so.
go for it.
No, you're quite all right. One, I'm actually, I'm going to start with this part. I'm actually a little disappointed that the preventive maintenance stuff is in the enhancement, and it's actually not a disappointment of you. It may be a disappointment more of city manager's office that for this long of time that this hasn't been included in the base budget. That this preventative maintenance stuff is not an enhancement. This is just to keep the facilities and the equipment that they need in bare working order. Now, I've only been here for 2 budget cycles, but I've reviewed more than enough budgets prior to that this should have been in part of their base plan, their base budget, to make sure that those facilities just have a bare maintenance
Yeah.
of capabilities.
Quite honestly, I think that should be the number one, not because it's a public safety or anything. But that's kind of a no-brainer. But it was to point them all out and get them there. But you got, I'll just point out,
Mission accomplished.
you got ICI of 39,300. You got 24,000. I think it's kind of a wash, and that ought to get done just because it ought to get done.
And then to just end on a good note, I couldn't disagree with Councilmember Miller more. You are the best fire department, highly over Van Dyne.
Thank you.
So I couldn't disagree with him more.
What's your logo? We're better than Van Dyne.
All right.
That's it on my part.
Mr.
I've got other things, and we can talk offline for those.
Mr. Mugar brought up that preventive maintenance stuff. And I wanted to ask a question. I don't know if you hit that when I walked out before, but is that more to create contracts for someone to come in and maintain those elements, or is that how would we? Who's going to implement that maintenance?
Yeah, that would be with the transition to the facilities
Okay.
department, that we talked about yesterday with John Urban and his staff, developing those relationships and those contracts for the service agreements and preventative maintenance agreements. So we looked at what are some of those infrastructure items like generators, garage doors, things that need to have routine service and maintenance, HVAC systems, and he priced some of those out. So what would it cost for them to take over those things and really start addressing them? So go ahead.
Internally or with contract?
Oh, these are all contracts.
These are all contracts.
And the answer to Matt's question is, I think these guys just suffered silently over time, and now that it came out, it's like, duh, we ought to be doing it.
Yep.
So it's 11:45. Are we needing to continue on with this, or is the city clerk?
I just have one thing of, I know that this was a very aggressive posture that I took today, and hope you
It really didn't.
I know we're asking for a lot, You know, and it's a heavy head that wears the crown. You know, I know that these are tough decisions for you, and we appreciate the consideration. You know, we appreciate all the support, the kind remarks that you've made. You know, you noted that one of the people in the audience here was the responder of the year.
Why don't you stand up so everybody?
He's too old to get up now.
Stand up, stand up. Wait, seriously.
Congratulations.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
You know, so we really do appreciate the consideration in helping us support our mission of taking care of this community. So, as always, if myself or any staff can help to answer any questions or have further dialogue, we're more than willing to do that. Certainly appreciate your time. I know this is a grueling, long couple days for you, and we appreciate all that. I appreciate my staff being here and with all the work that they did to help prepare the budget and this presentation. And I'd like to end on just a reminder that Councilmember Miller says I'm 90% right, which is a very high approval rating for me, so I want to make book on that. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief, I agree. Chief, I agreed with you 90%. That doesn't mean we're both right.
I'll take what I can.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
We'll see you. Our next budget is city clerk.
Tough act to follow.
I got them all warmed up for you.
Yeah.
You should be able to hit a home run after that. Good luck.
So did you get the clerks moved up earlier?
I'll find out. I had Diane call, so that was.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Chief.
everybody. Have a good day.
Yeah, see you, Chief.
So I'm pretty sure we'll get it moved up, and I
I'll file it.
had Parks coming, moving up to 12:30, and
The boosters.
Chief PD moved up to 2:30. So, give you some.
Okay, city clerk's office. Oh, I don't have page
28.
numbers, sorry.
Oh, yes, you have a page.
20.
for-
Well, I'm sure I have a page number, my number, my documents aren't numbered. The clerk's office, we're gonna do that one first?
Yeah,
Okay. Strategic planning, how we
28.
fit into that is, I feel it's effective government, open, transparent, efficient. Customer service is huge in the clerk's office. I feel that oftentimes that we are the first people to come in contact with individuals, whether we are resolving their inquiries or we're doing the research and directing them to another entity. Because oftentimes the school, the county, and the school, to the common person, that gets very confusing. So customer service is huge. Our KPIs, we are the historian for the city. We keep all the council actions. We try to keep that up on the web, laserfiche, so that it's available to departments and the citizens of the community. For the budget for the clerk's office, when I submitted it, it was pretty much status quo, except for the comp, because that will go up due to the election. That portion is taken out of the clerks. But Emily has moved on to another position, so we are in search of a replacement for our front person. So that will change the budget somewhat depending on who we hire. And we're interviewing for that next week. Okay, so does anybody have any questions regarding my clerk's budget?
Just a quick question, Pam. Council meeting minutes, for last year, just the quarter, is that, that dip in terms of the
It
percentage?
dips. You know, we really do try to make a good effort to get those approved at the next meeting. But when it's election time and there are customers at our counter, that's our priority at that time. We also did fall a little bit behind. Emily was out on maternity leave. So it depends on staffing and what our work level is when we fall behind.
But it's something for next year we should anticipate, obviously, that
Yeah.
they might be a little behind.
Well, even this
schedule.
year
look
with
at our-
Emily leaving.
Our KPI
Yes.
report from last week, third quarter was back to 100%.
Yes.
So it just, it was a function of everything. And we didn't lose Emily. Emily was given a promotional opportunity at the PD, so.
Yes, she's spreading her wings and advancing. Yes.
Can't blame her.
No, not at all. Okay, so no questions on my clerk's budget?
Well, I don't know, it's quite a few pages.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's
It's
huge.
huge, I know.
I don't know, we got a lot to potentially
getting
cut
lost.
here, so,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know where you think you're going.
Handouts, binders?
Yeah.
I have nothing to do with it.
I have one.
Would you like fruit?
Swaggy, glass bottles over here, you know, maybe that's,
Here we go.
I have one.
That's HR.
And I think it's partially because like whenever I come down to the counter, I feel like you have like so much more than 3 staff. And I don't know if that's like other departments that are kind of like in that area or.
Well, the water utility is
Okay.
where we used to be. Now we're where finance used to be.
Sure. Yep.
We don't have more.
Okay.
There's one
Employees.
part-time clerk, Terry Betcher.
Yeah, I have my election aide, my full-time front person, and then Terry Betcher is my part-time data election person, and then there's Angela, and then myself.
Okay.
Terry you'll see sometimes here before the council meetings helping people
Yep,
register.
but at the same time, we don't, so is that, then must show up in the election, or part-time, okay, got it. We're good.
Got it?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, then we'll move on to our election budget. There's a substantial increase. That is due to next year 4 elections, one being the presidential election. We always ramp up for early voting, and we'll do that for the April and the November election. And that's, the majority of the cost is the staffing for the elections. Again, I feel that with the election budget, it's the same as the clerk's budget. Effective government, be open, be transparent, have great customer service. I feel we do a phenomenal job with that, and I extend that to my families out in the field at the polling places. I really encourage my poll workers to have that mentality of assisting the voters. My KPIs for this year were pretty easy. They were 2 smaller elections. We met everything, and I have nothing in the fall. The budget did go up substantially, but again, it's to the 4 elections.
The early voting on the Saturday was a success. I've heard
Yes.
from a lot of people, so we'll be
Yes.
doing that again.
And, I don't have anything concrete, but I anticipate that I would do it again for the April election and the November election.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So one of the things, is if we for council do have a primary, what does that add to our budget?
Like this year, the February election, because it was, the only thing on the ballot was the mayor's election, so we paid for the entire
Because there was
election.
no other entity,
There
like
was no
county or
school.
state or school to offset
Correct.
that.
So,
Okay.
it's.
But you don't
But I
budget
mean,
for a
what
What was
primary.
the cost? she's
But what was
mentioning
the cost?
for that direct one election for that one thing that the city generated?
Roughly, it was about 25.
25,000?
It's roughly half of, half of what was spent, so it was 70,000, there's always some base in there, so yeah, that makes sense.
And when you do an election, no matter who's on the ballot, you still have to do the publications, the programming, the ordering of the ballots, paying the election inspectors at the polling places. We have 16. You always have to have an odd number of poll workers there. You can't go minimal. I certainly do cut back in the February election, but then we ramp it up for the April election and so forth.
Cost of democracy, right?
It is, yeah.
And the good news is that her 2021 budget will see a huge decrease.
Yes,
So you're up and down.
It's
I
just
am.
a-
I am.
And, to Matt's point, Matt raised a real good point, he asked about the fire department enhancement. This is a mandate, so I'm not gonna put this into an enhancement, but, just because this isn't, because it's a mandate, it has to be in there. The other ones should be in there, but makes for appropriate discussion, so this one makes it for rather boring, pretty cyclical.
My only question
I'm not
is.
boring.
No, you are not. Your budget may be, but.
My only question is, tail end of our last conversation with fire and a training facility, if that conversion were to take place, have there been discussions over the years about alternative locations for storage of the elections equipment?
It's been brought up recently. We've kicked around a couple ideas. I haven't physically gone out to look at those locations. Wherever we go, I have to be concerned about security because the machines get tested, and I want security there. And then temperature, humidity, things like that, we have to be careful so that there's not too much humidity, because at one point there was, and we were having issues with the ballots going through the machines. So I'm very conscious of those. Other than that, I feel wherever they place us, we'll make it work.
Pam's only been over there for a few years. It was only until the
I was wondering, where were
feds
they before?
literally in the hallway, bringing back fire. It was a fire hazard.
was not
She was literally taking that hallway in the back by clerks, between clerk and finance. They'd line up all the machines, have extension cords all over the place because there aren't a lot of outlets there, and they were literally doing it. It's like, stay away, they're doing testing, and you had to stay away. It was not appropriate. And security-wise, even though it's our own employees, they don't have the full security. When they're over there at the armory, the doors are closed. It's just Ange and Pam doing their thing.
And it really is efficient, because we plan on going over there, we notice that that's where we're gonna be, and we go there and we spend, a half a day, how long it takes us. Half a day, and we get it done, versus when I was here, we'd have interruptions. So,
Just for the viewers that might be out there, what are the timelines this year for the spring elections? Nomination papers can be taken out starting,
you can take out nomination papers anytime. You can't circulate them until December 1st. And then they need to be filed back with me by January 7th of 2020, by 5 o'clock. But we will get packets put together.
And then
If they have questions, they can call me also.
okay.
And I believe the League of Women Voters is having several how to run.
Yeah, I saw two that they were having.
Just
So
had
are
one
they
last
working
week.
with you on documents and that kind of thing, materials?
No, not really, but,
I know you have your own packets. there,
yeah, but anybody could go out on the Wisconsin site.
Election site,
Yeah,
yeah.
and download documents.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have to
They're
get them from me.
So far, they worked with Sue Ertmer. I presented this last week, and Sue pretty much presented the typical packet that you would present to any potential candidate, so.
Okay,
Well, looks like we're right on time.
Perfect, yeah.
awesome. Have a great lunch. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
You sure you don't wanna stay for another hour?
It's a great opportunity, but I'm gonna pass.
Who's the politician now?
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam.
So are we gonna do 12:30 reconvene?
Meeting, so somebody's going.
Yeah.
She always had.
Perfect.
Yep,
Very,
that was
very
good.
inflammatory.
Parks.
The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly.